I don't think I would last in jail. I don't know how you're doing it.
Not well.
Just don't want to depend on him, I guess. I think that's everyone's fear.
I miss your eyes. Your nose.
I like yours.
That's crooked. Maybe I can get beat up in here and someone will punch it so hard it fixes itself.
Sheriff's office, anybody inside? Announce your presence, make yourselves known.
I love you, and I miss you.
Stop.
I
love you.
Thursday, July 1st, 2021 wasn't unlike any other in the Halderson household in Windsor, Wisconsin. Living inside the home was 50-year-old Bart Halderson, his wife, 53-year-old Krista, and their youngest son, 23-year-old Chandler. Chandler was a hard-working live-in college student with an exciting life and an extremely bright future. He was pursuing an IT degree at Madison Technical College, was a member of a police scuba diving team, a young employee at an insurance company, and had a job waiting for him at Elon Musk's prestigious company, SpaceX, upon graduating. He was, by all accounts, an overachiever, and his parents couldn't have been more proud. Chandler also liked to cook, and on the evening of the 1st, he'd made a pasta with scampi sauce dinner for his parents. Following dinner, he helped them gather and pack up tools and luggage in preparation for their 4th of July getaway. His parents had informed him over dinner that they were going on a weekend trip up to their family's cabin, 3 hours away in the woods of Langlade County. During the day, Chandler had noticed his father take a bank-wrapped stack of cash out of the safe in the basement. He'd also seen that his parents had taken a handful of bottles from the liquor cabinet. He'd noted both of these things as odd, but didn't think too much of it. After helping them get their belongings together, the three enjoyed some television before they all headed to bed. That would be the last time Chandler would see his parents alive. The next morning, Friday, July 2nd, Chandler's parents took off for the cabin before he awoke. Chandler enjoyed a day of peace and quiet until that afternoon there came a knock at the door. It turned out to be a coworker of Krista's. She hadn't shown up or called out of work that day, which was extremely unusual behavior for her. The colleague had tried contacting her by phone, but to no avail, so he'd come by to make sure she was okay. Chandler told him that his mom and dad had been preparing for a trip up to the family cabin and had left that morning. With everything going on, she'd probably forgotten to call out. Slightly relieved, her coworker left, but kept in touch with Chandler over the weekend to make sure that Krista made it back safe. However, when Krista didn't come to work or call out that Monday or Tuesday, her coworker had a gut feeling that something was wrong and encouraged Chandler to go to the police. When they still hadn't come home by Wednesday, July 7th, Chandler took his advice and filed a missing persons report to the Dane County Sheriff's Office. He advised police that his parents had been driven up to the cabin by a mysterious couple. After leaving the police station, Chandler began desperately reaching out to people by phone and going door to door around his neighborhood, asking everyone if they'd heard from his parents.
Kind of difficult to track them down, so and anyone would have like security cameras and stuff like that.
However, no one had seen or heard anything. The next day, July 8th, Chandler's brother Mitchell and his fiancée met police officers at the family cabin to search the premises for Bart and Krista. But instead, they discovered something rather odd.
We probably could get in if you wanted us to. Obviously, there'd be some damage. We'd try to minimize it as best we could. But
Yeah, no, I think that honestly at least makes sense at this point.
Sheriff's office, anybody inside? Announce your presence, make yourselves known.
There were no suitcases or possessions inside the cabin. Surfaces were covered in layers of dust, and it didn't look as if anything had been moved or even touched. It was clear that no one had been inside at any point in the recent past. With nowhere else to turn, police summoned Chandler as well as his girlfriend Kat down to the police station in the hopes of uncovering some more details that would help them locate his missing parents. Kat's demeanor at being taken to the station is very different compared to Chandler's.
Oh my god, you can see me? So I'm not gonna lie, if you hear me burping, I have a very sensitive stomach. Is it true that the back seats are leather just in case people throw up or pee back here? Oh, we're good. Boys are always so monotone, stubborn. Don't want to talk about steel magnolias.
You just call me a suspect.
Oh, we both really like Star Wars.
The following interrogation footage has been analyzed by a qualified team, including a licensed attorney, a licensed clinical psychologist, a former licensed professional counselor, and a licensed professional counselor.
So, Brian Trump, Detective Dane County Sheriff's Office, we spoke yesterday. Yeah, Chandler Halderson. Yep. So, obviously, we're here. We want to talk a little bit about your parents going missing, right, Krista and Bart? Before we get started, just because you're up here, okay, so I'm just going to read you your constitutional rights. Okay, so it's the Dane County issued card that they give us. So I'll just read them to you right off the card, okay?
The detective's decision to read directly from the note card, despite surely having committed the Miranda rights to memory, could be to emphasize to Chandler that being Mirandized is just a formality and nothing he needs to think too hard about. After Chandler has read his Miranda rights, the detectives jump directly into questioning. In missing persons cases especially, it's important that investigators work with a sense of urgency. Each minute that passes makes it less likely that the victims will be found alive. However, not taking the time to develop rapport with someone can lead to their anxiety level remaining high, which would make them more closed off. Taking a few minutes to put someone at ease and try to connect with them can end up saving a lot of time in the long run.
So you reported your parents missing. We got some information from you yesterday. So I guess if you want to start with, let's just go back to last Wednesday. Wednesday. I was with my dad. Yeah, I remember it. It was kind of a bad day. Okay. Why was it a bad day? I tossed the ball, and I smashed the glass. Okay. With the dog's help. That set my dad off, and we tried to clean it up. Okay. I don't know about him, but I got injured. But he was mad. He didn't really talk to me too much that day. By the way, a detective at my house said something's happened, and while we were leaving, people were going inside. Is there a warrant for my house? Can I make a win? Officer? Yeah. What are they up to?
I didn't hear that.
What are they up to?
My guess is they want to just ask some more follow-up questions and stuff.
No, they went into the house.
They would go into the office there.
They just went behind it. Officer Haley just walked pretty much in to the gate, the gate on the outside. She just kind of walked in. I was wondering if everything's okay, because she said something's happened.
Okay.
And we need to go down.
Alright. I'll find out what that's about.
Well, has anything bad happened?
Not sure.
It's definitely strange that Chandler would suddenly inquire about a warrant. He looks at the detective with a more stern countenance when asking this question, and makes what appears to be direct and sustained eye contact. While sustained eye contact is more of a sign of dishonesty rather than honesty, and looking away periodically can be due to accessing memories, Chandler's almost constant looking away is atypical behavior and suspicious. Just like how his sustained eye contact is a red flag, the awkward, sustained, almost complete lack of eye contact would raise concerns. Here, his eye contact has nothing to do with trying to look open and honest, and everything to do with seeking out any emotions or clues in the officer's face as he responds. For now, they shift their focus back to getting a timeline for what Chandler did on Thursday, July 1st, the last day he'd seen his parents.
It's Thursday morning. I wake up. I kind of just stay in my room on my phone. Help my mom out getting ready in the morning. She left for work at 7:30.
His hand covers both sides of his face and he rubs his chin. These are typically self-soothing behaviors, which aren't unusual for a situation like this. Most people in Chandler's position would be anxious. The pressure from the rubbing is comforting, and his hand and arm serve as a subconscious barrier between him and the detective he's talking to. Chandler speaks very slowly, even when describing routine activities like helping his mom with chores before work. He appears to be thinking a lot and often stares blankly at the floor, as if in a daze. This is a common symptom of emotional cutoff, which results when a person is under high stress or has experienced a traumatic event. Emotional cutoff is an adaptive response that allows a person to better cope with intense situations without falling apart or having an emotional breakdown. Since Chandler was frequently with his girlfriend Kat since Friday, detectives are interviewing both so they can uncover any inconsistencies between their stories. If their recounts of the past weekend don't match up, the two are going to have a huge problem.
Oh, there's a Pooh Bear? All right, you can play with it if you want to. Don't twist my arm. All right. Oh, it's right over there if you want to. Oh, I can grab it. I want to hit you with the Pooh Bear. Oh, please don't. Thank you.
Just hang out for a bit. Please. Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Her response to seeing the stuffed animal, then proceeding to cuddling with it on the couch as if she's lounging around her own home, may be indicators of emotional immaturity. When someone doesn't show an appropriate level of concern during an investigation, detectives can interpret this as a red flag. Kat sits alone in the interrogation room for about 20 minutes, looking as if she's battling fatigue. Detectives finally enter, introduce themselves, and make her a generous offer in the hopes she lets her guard down.
So this is George. He's one of my partners. Anthony, the one that you spoke with me yesterday, he's off today, so you get George.
I don't know if you're hungry, buy you 2 cookies.
Is there chocolate?
One has chocolate, one doesn't.
I wish it's chocolate. Are you really? If I eat it, I'll just project all vomit. Oh, please don't. There's a too emotional also vomit. So.
I know one sprinkles, but you know what? I can put them here if you want it. You want it? That one has chocolate.
This one?
This one.
Oh. I was like...
You threw that one out.
Kat seems to be in a much softer interrogation room than Chandler. Soft interrogation rooms come from a trauma-informed perspective. When family members, children, or victims of assault need to be questioned by police, they may feel safer doing so in a space that feels comfortable, especially compared to a bare interrogation room. In a regular interrogation room, detectives want the suspect to rely on them to provide comfort, such as compliments, food, cigarettes, attention, rather than the room itself providing comfort.
So, some of it is going to be repeat. I just want to make sure that I'm really understanding everything. So, again, give me your timeline from Thursday. Thursday I worked. That's when Chandler told me, I think it was Thursday, that his parents were going up to the cabin with some friends. So he was going to be at the house with the dogs by himself all weekend. Went to sleep.
Friday morning, I woke up. They had left with the stuff was all set out. I remembered the cast. Alright, so Friday during the day, I just played video games, kind of. Yeah, then after work, I believe that was the day Kat came over. After whose work? Kat, she has 5 her work. 5 is her work when she was off. I believe she came over. She, I believe she stayed with me on that couch that night.
Woke up, got ready for work, went to work. We planned that I was going to go over there and spend the night. just hang out with him and the dogs.
So you went to East Target, you went from Hilldale to East Target?
To East, to my mom's house, to grab the hydrogen peroxide and the Swiffer because Chandler broke the glass of the fireplace and cut his toe, so we wanted to clean that and then clean up the glass and blood.
You've probably noticed that Kat is eating her cookie extremely slowly. This is significant because if you remember, when the detectives first offered Kat the cookies, she told them that she has a chocolate allergy. She claimed that she'll violently throw up if she eats it. However, between the sprinkle cookie and the chocolate chip cookie, she chose the chocolate one. This may explain why she's holding on to it for so long and taking such tiny bites. She could be trying to avoid the chocolate or ingest only little bits of it at a time. You'll later see throughout the interview that she pauses multiple times, reporting the urge to vomit. Her choice to take the chocolate cookie, though, was unusual and could be a possible indication of attention-seeking behaviors.
So then to Chandler's. And then I was there, and then I left in the morning because he wanted to do chores, and then I know around what time I was home. Took a picture. And so on Saturday, I was with my dog at 8:53 a.m. So did you see the fireplace? What did it look like? Like, broken. It was like one pane, I think, on the left side.
And did you see, like, the blood in the glass? Was that all picked up?
It was pretty much all picked up, except, like, a little bit of glass was still there. Honestly, I didn't see, like, a lot of blood, but probably because it was only a cut on his big toe.
Okay.
I see what kind.
And blood was by the fireplace, I assume? The blood was by the fireplace?
I think so. I didn't, like, see it, you know?
Oh, you didn't see the blood? Oh.
Honestly, I didn't see, like, a lot of blood, but...
It's Sunday. It's the 4th. In the morning, I'm a little worried about my family. I think I called my mom. Oh, throughout I've called, I don't know the times, though. Throughout the weekend, I mean. But I called my mom, I believe, in the morning. There's along those lines, and I get a text from her. It was a text message. It wasn't even an iMessage, so I assumed. She said white leg today. So she sent it that day.
Chandler makes notably little eye contact with either officer throughout his explanation of his weekend. Occasionally breaking eye contact is a typical sign of one's attempt to access memories. But Chandler is mostly staring down and away from detectives, only looking up at them every now and then. Also, the way Chandler backtracks here sounds as if he made a mistake by indicating to detectives that he only contacted his mother on July 4th. He felt the need to clarify his statement, a sign that there's something of possible interest here.
I called Dan that Sunday, asked him what he's up to, if he wants to hang out. I don't like being alone at the house very long. Dan is mom's co-worker / friend? Yeah, he's this guy. He invited me for fireworks in his driveway. No, this is Sunday. So I went to Kat's house to eat, but we ended up not eating there. We went to Cress's house. Kat and I rushed back to my house, let the girls out, and we go back straight to the farm.
The farm is Cress's home and property. It's a large plot of land that features Cress's house, fields of crops and plants, a big barn, and an above-ground swimming pool that Chandler and Kat frequently use. After enjoying a meal at the farm, the couple traveled back to Chandler's house around 7 p.m. They fed his dogs and took them outside, tackled a couple other small chores. Then they made their way to Dan's house to light fireworks and spend the 4th of July holiday together. After a fireworks show that nearly caused a bushfire, the pair decided it was time to call it a night. They went back to Chandler's house and fell asleep together around 10 p.m. Kat tells investigators much of the same thing about her holiday.
When you say you went home, you went to
Mom's.
Your mom's?
Yes.
Okay.
Very good. Stomach acid.
Kat corroborates Chandler's story. Kat shows detectives a video of Chandler that's timestamped on July 4th.
And then we left around 6:30 because he had to be home before 8 to feed the dogs their dinner. And so we left around 6:30, probably got to my mom's house.
There's a garbage or a bathroom.
I think I would look really sus if I stand up and run out of here. I'm not trying to get tackled.
I'm not going to tackle you.
You go, you too.
Oh.
You're good.
Okay.
After enjoying fireworks at Dan's house, then going back to Chandler's for the night, the two woke up together Monday morning. Kat left for work shortly before 8 a.m. Chandler supposedly spent the morning playing video games and watching TV. He then made a rather spontaneous visit to the farm by himself.
Well, at the end of the day on Monday, I did go for the afternoon. I did go to the farm to talk to Chris and Kat's mom. I told them what's happening with my health because I had the appointment at 2. Did you go to the farm before or after? Because I told them what happened to me. And I told them the legs are probably going to be permanent and the headaches should be fixed after the hemorrhage is cleared a little bit.
Chandler is speaking like someone who's trying to jog their memory. He must know that the interrogation isn't some sort of memory test, but he seems keen on recalling every detail, perhaps hoping that providing such detail will mean that he won't be considered a suspect. An innocent person would reasonably want to cough up as much information as possible. However, focusing on details could also be Chandler's way of diffusing any stress or anxiety he's feeling.
Where are we? Sunday. So you were swimming, having a breakdown. What were you having a breakdown about? You ever have your legs stressed? Yeah, no, I haven't. Just, I don't even know if they're done getting as bad as they can be yet. So that's not fun. And I think you were telling me last night it's a symptom of a concussion, right? So that's not it. It's a symptom of nerve damage from the hit in my spine. So it's permanent. Okay, I understand that now better. Yeah, I go to dinner at Kat's house on the east side. Okay. What time do you think that was? It's got to be 7:30. I left the farm. I think we just eat and cuddle a little bit. Huh? When I go home.
So
I'm doing good, so I'll let you keep going.
I really try to remember things. And then Sunday, woke up, got ready.
Sunday or Monday?
Monday, sorry. Left around 7:40 because I took a picture at 7:33 of us. Then I went to work. I don't know if you want to see a picture of me at my job because I took a picture in the hazardous section. In the hazardous medication.
So far, Kat comes across as open and forthcoming with detectives. She answers all of their questions in detail and offers up photos and timestamps readily and frequently without being asked. On the other hand, this does all seem a tad convenient. This behavior seems unusual, but may indicate her willingness to be cooperative.
From there, I went to my mom's house because Chandler went to the farm because my mom's fiance lets him walk in the pool because that's one of the things we did Sunday because it helped stretch out his legs, make him feel better because I also helped stretch his legs on Friday because he has some tired numbness, that's the word, in them from his fall he had a couple weeks back.
From there, Kat's account of Monday night mimics Chandler's. They met up at Kat's mom's house sometime around 8 p.m., ate dinner, and watched TV together. Then Chandler left, and they spent the night in their respective homes. We pick our tale back up on Tuesday morning.
Dan is worried about my mom on Tuesday, I think.
Did he call
I
or
said
text?
no word. My mom, I don't know if he called or texted. I think he just contacted. That's what I can think of.
Reached out.
Yeah, he reached out. Then I'm like, oh, it's Tuesday morning. They should be here. No worry. I think I called my mom that day.
So from the time they left, did you talk to them at all when they were? I got a text. You got the one text, and that you mentioned earlier. Don't even like it, right? Yeah. That was it. Nothing else.
Yeah. So that's fishy to me, even the text, because I realized Memorial Day is when the White Light Parade is.
Oh, sure.
There's no 4th of July. Maybe there's cheap drinks, but there's no parade at White Lake on the 4th. Then I started trying to get the glass. So I got a little lazy on the glass. I just kind of had chairs in front of it. My blood was kind of on the floor, so I got the Swiffer I borrowed from Kat. I Swiffered the floor, and then I got a little bit in the kitchen. And then everywhere kind of I walked, pretty much. The bathroom, the kitchen, and then I couldn't get the carpet, so I still stained that up real crappy.
While it's possible that the bloody toe and the explanation behind it are all true, traces of blood at a crime scene are always a red flag to law enforcement. They'll likely be checking out these stains in order to gauge whether they really might have come from a cut, or if they were clearly caused by something else. One must wonder if Chandler has ever heard of a Band-Aid.
I just tried to stop all the bleeding, but it wouldn't stop. So
That blood was all coming from your left foot.
yeah, left foot hole.
Left foot hole.
Yeah.
I mean, are we talking massive amounts of blood? Or are we talking, a little bit? Like describe.
It started as drops until I got to the bathroom. And then I got back to go grab my sock and the paper towel. And I see the glasses in there, so I grab a tweezers and I pull it out. And then it starts squirting out. And I got a little bit of the rock. It wasn't that bad of the rock. But I think the worst was that floor. It kind of like this lid puddles.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't good.
Are we not in the floor down in the basement?
Well, that one, and then I go upstairs to the kitchen, and it's still going, and I'm trying to get my foot in the sink just to slow it down and pinch it maybe.
Chandler continues with a highly detailed account of his every move. He's sticking to his strategy of providing a description of every single step. However, his constricted emotions and facial expressions make it difficult to read whether this is a symptom of anxiety or a genuine attempt to be helpful.
What's work today for only 30 minutes?
Why only 30?
I was crying.
Okay.
I'm an emotional person.
That's what you're crying about.
My boyfriend's parents are missing. I think it's more concerning if I wasn't concerned. I'm a very emotional person. I cry enough for both of us, is what I like to say.
Sure.
It's I hang out with the family often, There's parents, they're important.
As far as the blood on your foot, how did you clean that up? So we were talking, you had blood on Swiffer Wet Jet. Okay, Swiffer Wet Jet. And where did you get that from?
Kat let me borrow it.
Where's it at now?
I returned it to Kat.
Yeah. Did you use anything else?
Hydrogen peroxide for the tiles and the hard floors. Just the big globs needed a little bit.
Hydrogen peroxide. Did that seem to help get rid of the blood?
Well, it hurt my foot. That stuff. But it didn't really help. Okay, it kind of just made a mess. Well, when I had some blood on the basement, I used the peroxide.
Okay. Basement floor and tiles in the kitchen?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, peroxide. There wasn't as much. Like, there were, like, this size pools in the kitchen.
Okay.
I was pinching it pretty dang hard.
And did you clean up at all when it actually happened?
You know, my dad was furious. So he did stuff
to clean it?
Yeah. I don't know what he did. But he sent me to my room upstairs, and he did whatever he did, but it still was on the floor after he was done.
Okay. Did your dad get injured at all when the glass broke? Did he step on any of it?
He sent me up. But I don't doubt it. If he gets mad, he's not thinking.
So we don't know if your dad got hurt?
No.
Okay.
No. But my best guess is that guy reached in the fireplace and cut his arm or something. I don't know. So, head pain, do you guys have like Tylenol or something? I know you guys can't really offer anything like that, but
like a headache?
Yeah, I've been getting the migraines from all of the hits and stuff.
Most people wouldn't dare to make a joke about their missing loved one being hurt out of fear and concern that they actually could be. Chandler's amusement about his dad getting cut will certainly be noted by detectives as a red flag. To be fair, it's possible that Chandler is just the type of person who uses inappropriate humor to cope with stress or anxiety. However, when it's discovered what lay among the ashes of the Halderson's fireplace, you'll look back on this comment with a bit more speculation.
Then I go to the police station because I ask her, when should I make a thing? I'm sorry. Don't worry, sir.
Wednesday morning, you said you went to the police department?
Yeah, to make a talk to him about my parents. And then I met with 3 sheriffs.
Chandler's show of emotion is sudden and brief. The nature of his display calls into question whether he's trying really hard to keep his composure or whether this short demonstration was merely an affectation. There's also a third theory. Chandler's agitation might not concern his parents' disappearance at all. Chandler was surely trying to say missing persons report, but he couldn't seem to remember what it's called, no matter how hard he tried.
How's Chandler been? Like I said, he's not really, he expresses it in a different way. He's not like the biggest emotional person, but like, I guess like when I look at him, it's different when other people look at him. Like I can tell it's really hard on him. And like, he just sits there and dissociates and like, cases and like, you know, just sits there like, where are my parents, like a shout.
Kat also told police that Chandler was trying to keep himself optimistic and saying things like, well, they're at the cabin. They don't get a lot of reception, so that's why we haven't talked to them. As well as speculating that maybe their phones died and that was why they haven't heard from them.
So his brother is there today. He leaves.
To go to the cabin?
Yeah, what does Chandler want to do? Does he want to stay in Madison? Does he want to go up to the cabin and help his brother? What's he thinking?
I asked him that when I was on the couch. I was like, why don't we go up to the cabin? Because like his fiance and him were going. He's like, well, I can't drive. I'm like, well, I could have drove. He's like, yeah, you could have. He's like, but I don't know if they need me in Madison for questions, which clearly you guys did. And I also need to be with the dogs. So then I think he went to his neighbors to see if they had like any like a Ring camera and if there's like footage that might have caught the car, and they said they already handed it over to the police. When he came back, I was in the backyard playing frisbee with the dogs.
Fancy security system. I was wondering if you were able to capture the road or my house.
The police actually came and downloaded everything they have. But it's actually my sister's house.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so they were here, I think till like 9 o'clock last night and downloaded all the video she's got. So we're hoping that...
Yeah, did it capture anything on...
We don't know. we don't know. They just took a copy of everything, and so we're hoping.
Wide-angle lens.
Yeah, and it's all
Be able to get a color.
Yeah, and it's all HD, and then I think there's one.
Especially in the dark, it looks like it has a little bit of night vision.
Yeah, and there's one on the corner of the garage too.
How was he when he came back from the neighbor's house after checking for the ring?
He was like, I don't know, I guess a little relieved that they had a camera and they already handed it over to the police. Like, he's really concerned about his parents.
He was definitely concerned based on a call he placed to the sheriff's office before his interrogation.
A little confused. I got 2 squads parked right outside my house, and they're not really canvassing, they're just kind of sitting there. Is everything alright?
Yeah, I mean, they're in the area doing canvassing, and they're also probably doing a shift change right now, getting our second shift crew on around 3:30.
Oh, there's 4 now. Something going on that we need to know? Do you know of anything? So, I don't know. It's kind of stressful. Sorry, so there's nothing new going on?
Not that I'm aware of.
Alright.
But in addition to his concern was his notable level of apprehension, and the source behind it would soon be uncovered.
Is there any reason to believe Mom or Dad's blood would be somewhere in the house? Have they been injured at all that you're aware of? Well, my dad scratches his psoriasis till he, gushes blood. Okay. Gushing, describe gushing to me. Enough to run down your leg, cover your leg, I suppose, he has it on his knee. So when he does this, it just drips down. I ask him to stop, but he doesn't do it when he's stressed out. Yeah, he just kind of it's his tick. Probably itches. My mom's blood, from her bloody nose that she gets sometimes when she wakes up. So that's why we've been doing the humidifier and dehumidifiers. Yeah. Probably downstairs you get we have to do multiple of them, but she can't be in the living room too long because that's a dehumidifier. And if she does, her nose gets bad. Not like a regular one, she gets it bad.
We begin to see some variance in Chandler's facial expressions and intonation. He's really dramatizing his description of how his parents' blood could be present in the home. In reality, neither the scratching of the psoriasis nor a nosebleed are enough to produce noticeable pools of blood. He might think he's being helpful and convincing, but he's actually coming off as quite suspicious. The fact that further investigation revealed considerably large traces of blood that had once been on the basement floor inside Chandler's home doesn't help his argument. In fact, it seems as if he might be trying to explain away why there may be a lot of blood found inside his house.
So he has a good relationship with Mom and Dad.
He's introverted and, doesn't want to hang out with his parents. He'd rather video game on his computer.
It's a good relationship. No problems that you know of between the 3 of them?
I mean, he owed them money, but he paid them back. I told you that already. Mm-hmm. And that's why I was let over during the weekend. But other than that, that's, the only time I've really seen a big problem with them, I guess.
So how did that come about? Why was that a big deal? Because I thought yesterday you said that he's owed for rent and Christmas presents and stuff like that. So why was it
those 2 weeks?
Yeah.
Because he was working for American Family at the time. And there was problems with HR and how they weren't paying him. And it was they sent it in the mail, sent it to not his address. So he was please cancel that check. Then he tried getting them to deposit it. And then at that point they owed him a couple $1,000s because they were so far behind. And then I guess the company that they sent money through was this doesn't seem legit. They thought it was a scam. And so his parents were you got to give us that money because we know you have money. Then he paid them. And it was just those 2 weeks that were you have strict.
It seems odd that Chandler's parents were instantly critical and not more understanding of the problems he was having getting paid. This indicates that there were probably pre-existing issues concerning Chandler and making excuses to not repay his debts. Bart and Krista simply could have been drawing the line with Chandler rather than being hard on him. It could also be for this reason that they gave Chandler chores and expected him to cook sometimes.
So for the 2 weeks, was that when he hurt his back when he fell?
Yeah, it pretty much started, like, right after he fell. Because, like, they could just say, Cat, come over. It was a part of, like, the recovery and, like, hey, pay us back. Like, because he fell downstairs, they just had twice bruised his ribs, had to wear, like, a neck brace. They were obviously concerned and didn't want him doing a lot.
Do you know when he fell?
Yes, June 17th. Before 1:42, because that's around the time this picture was taken.
He was just going down the stairs and fell?
He was on the phone with his boss, who was telling him to hurry up to his computer, so he was running down the wooden stairs with socks.
Yeah. Classic.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to ask you a weird question with him falling. He probably was going on the computer, but any kind of violence in the house? No.
His dad was downstairs at his computer. He was telling me about, like, hearing Chandler fall. He was like, I was on my computer, it didn't sound bad. And then, like, I got up to, like, check after a while, and, like, he was on the floor. And I was like, okay, Mr. Halderson.
Sure.
Yeah.
He hasn't said anything about it afterwards, like, hey, I really, like, I didn't just slip on my socks, I actually...
No, Chandler's clumsy. Okay, it is not the first time he has fallen. He needs, like, a life alert with things. Yeah. I've seen one of his many falls. Just this. He really likes his socks.
Okay. Socks and long sleeves.
Yeah. It's really cute. It's good takeaway.
Chandler supposedly ran down the wooden staircase in his home while wearing socks, causing him to slip and fall down the stairs. He sustained a concussion, bruises to his ribs, and nerve damage resulting from a hit to the upper spine. The concussion alone left him with poor memory recall and trouble processing information quickly, among other lasting symptoms. Because his injuries impacted his cognitive ability, Chandler apparently felt that it would be best to notify his soon-to-be bosses at SpaceX of his accident. As a result, he lost his position at the company. This loss, in combination with the persistent and indefinite discomfort of his injuries, weighed heavily on Chandler, not to mention his parents having gone missing not long after. It certainly sounds like an unfortunate case, and while the circumstances surrounding his termination are disheartening, it seems odd that Chandler would voluntarily give up his dream job, seemingly prematurely. If he really did have his future mapped out and it all hinged on this job, most others wouldn't have given up without a fight. However, Chandler essentially just forfeited his future position.
What about Florida? So that's where SpaceX was, that's where he was supposed to go. What was the plan? Go down there? You too? Mm-hmm. Okay. So what did that mean? Because obviously you're a job here, so did you have a job lined up?
Or we're just going to transfer to, I'm not trying to say FU, but like FU, Florida University, because they also have a pharmacy school down there. So I'm getting Facebook notifications because people are reposting the Dane County Sheriff's like notice about them, and we've just been messaging people, and like people have been noticing, they're like, hey, are you guys okay? And we're just like repost or tell people.
Sure.
Yeah. We're just gonna go down there.
Did you guys have like everything lined up? Like when were you supposed to?
She was supposed to leave the Saturday of the fall. So happened on Thursday, Friday. He's supposed to leave Saturday morning. And then I was going to leave at the end or middle of August because I wanted to be here for my birthday. Oh, it's a big one. 2000, yeah. Gonna get crunk.
The tragic fall ultimately cost him his job and his future among the palm trees. Perhaps this was just a coincidence or even a fateful stroke of bad luck. Or maybe the fall is just a small part of something more convoluted. Detectives would discover the truth soon enough.
Did you guys have like a place that you were gonna, like, did you have everything kind of figured out? Where were you gonna stay?
Just like apartment building in Titusville.
Okay. Did he like already sign the lease and stuff?
I think so.
Before Chandler lost his job, she was supposed to be moving down to Florida with him in early August. It's odd that her big move across the country was just around the corner, and she had absolutely no idea what apartment they were moving to, and no confirmation that the arrangements were actually in place.
And Mitch hasn't been in the cabinet in a while, right? Today? Oh, well, today.
Yeah, I couldn't say he's been there. He didn't go last year.
Okay. Does he kind of do his own thing, or?
Mitch hasn't lived with us, or, like, he's got a family now, a dog, a girlfriend, no kids, but cool. He's kind of, opposite time. You know how it is with brothers.
Yeah.
He's flew the coop.
Got a feeling myself.
Yeah.
Right.
I've started thinking about that myself, and my parents are trying to figure that out with me.
Mm-hmm.
It's normal for a young person to receive help and guidance from their parents, but Chandler sounds more like he needs his parents to hold his hand, which is indicative of severe emotional immaturity. Although many young adults may live at home for a time, they should be working towards financial independence. When someone is happy to mooch off of their parents or another person with no long-term goals for themselves, this can be a red flag. In fact, living a parasitic lifestyle can be a sign of psychopathy. Another sign of Chandler's immaturity was that following his parents' disappearance, it was noted that all the couches in the basement were pushed together, and when he was asked why, Chandler said that he had made himself a fort to sleep in.
Bill, you ever heard about that? They got all the background, I think, right?
Yeah, I think so.
So, I think it's time we start talking about what happened to your parents. Like the truthful version. Okay. So we have like 20 pages of writing. We're going to start with a clean white piece of paper for you to start telling the truth. Okay. Because listen to me.
Confronted with a change in the detective's tactics, Chandler immediately sits up and leans away from the detectives. The detective's choice to cut Chandler off before he could say anything is actually a move taken straight from the Reed technique. In this style of interrogation, the detectives are advised to immediately cut off any attempts to lie, so as not to allow the suspect to entrench themselves in that lie. In this case, detectives knew Chandler's first instinct would be to try to scramble his way out of this and quickly shut him down.
Is he being interviewed too, or is he done?
Honestly, I'm with you, so I don't know. You have my attention. So there you go. There you go.
With all this questioning, Kat must be adding things up and possibly realizing that Chandler may be a suspect. If she isn't concerned by now, she definitely should be.
This is the only chance you're going to have to tell us the truth. Okay. Listen. I can't tell you what we know, but we know you're not telling us the truth. We know your parents are no longer with us. Okay, and we know the reason why.
Chandler appeared taken aback by the detective's statement that his parents were no longer alive. This is less likely shock at finding out that his parents are dead, and more likely the realization that the jig is up. Officers actually do have proof of his involvement in what really happened to Bart and Krista. Unfortunately, the clues that police managed to dig up tell a morbid tale of the happy couple's last moments. Chandler isn't the only one under suspicion. After all, Kat was with him frequently throughout the weekend. If detectives were also able to find proof of Kat's involvement, she might have a similar conversation waiting around the corner for her. One reason the investigators may be suspicious of her is that while Kat's mother Dolce was a trainee at a public safety commission, she was overheard talking on the phone to her daughter. The instructors at the event claimed that they heard Dolce say to Kat, "But you were not home that night." It's unclear exactly which night they were referring to, but the instructors alleged that they may have heard Kat reply something along the lines of, "Just tell them I was home last night." Thinking this was odd, The instructors asked Dolce what was going on, and she repeatedly told them she was home, she was home. It's important to note that it can't be confirmed what was actually said on the phone call. Still, the instructors told the police what they believed they had overheard. Let's check back in on Kat's interview.
We've been at the house during the renovations. So there's a lot going on at the house. What does the smell like in the house?
Dog.
Okay.
Like when they were working on the basement walls, you could like kind of smell the dusty smell. There's a fiery smell on Friday because when he broke the glass thing on the fireplace, like ash was like exposed. Yeah.
Okay.
The pungent smell of fire is an important observation, as it indicates that the fireplace was actually used not long before she was there.
Does Chandler talk about any firearms that he has?
His friend did gift him one.
Okay. What is it?
I don't know what it's called. But other than that, his parents, they have like a safe with other guns. Because he used to be on the shooting team in college.
Okay, you need to tell the truth. Listen. You need to tell the truth about what happened. And just tell us why it happened. Okay? If something happened, if you were defending yourself, or if you just got fed up with stuff, you need to tell us the truth. Okay?
Chandler exhibits a significant amount of anchor point shifting here, indicating that the detective's pressure is starting to make him feel anxious. This is an important cue to the detectives that if they keep pushing, he may get to a point where he will open up and be honest soon.
This is your chance to tell us why. Okay? I'm not BSing you. Okay? So can we do that?
Okay. Lawyer.
I'm sorry.
Say it again, lawyer.
Yeah.
Because they're...
You want a lawyer?
Yeah. Okay. So...
Chandler has clearly just invoked his right to counsel. The questioning at this point needs to stop. He seems to have resorted to asking for counsel because he was being confronted with evidence contrary to his statements.
So how did you find out that the parents were not, that they were late? Did he tell you?
Yeah, we text like all the time, or Snapchat all the time, not really text, both. And I was like, hey, like, have you heard from them? He's like, no, not yet. I'm like, okay, well, has Mitch heard from them? He's like, I don't know. I'm like, okay, well, you should maybe ask Mitch. He's like, I don't want to make him worry. I'm like, well, even just ask, like, hey, his mom sent you pictures of the cabin or anything. And I'm like, Tuesday, it was like, still haven't heard anything? He was like, yeah, no, I'm going to go to the police tomorrow. Then he went to the police on Wednesday.
You were trying to call them?
Yeah, he tried to call them. Like, he called his mom in front of me at one point and went straight to voicemail.
Do you know what day that was? Just sometime this weekend. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Kat tries numerous times to present Chandler in a favorable light. She mentions that it was his idea to call the police and that he tried calling his mom in front of her. Despite the type of questions she's being asked about him, she seems to be standing by his side, even at the point where the detective's questions are getting more intense and implying foul play on Chandler's part. But unbeknownst to her, detectives are already on his tail.
Exactly what happened. Okay, you know what happened. We're not going to tell you what happened. You know what happened. You were there when it happened. We're not BSing you, okay? I wasn't there when it happened. Okay?
We know more than you think we know. Actually, there's people that have told us things. We have evidence. We have proof. We have more to say about that. So your parents never made it to the cabin, and I think you know that. Okay, so you're asking for an attorney. We're not going to ask any more questions.
Instead of don't stand up, just pull it over here for me. Get any in your pockets at all. Well, just a wallet that just put in there. Hey, okay. Stay close. Back up there. Yeah,
Despite the interrogation ending, Chandler still had something disturbing to say after he was handcuffed. He told the officer escorting him from the room that, quote, "You don't know the whole story," and that he didn't feel bad about what I did. When the officer asked what he meant by that, he didn't respond.
You don't think he had anything to do with his mom and dad being unheard from?
No. No. All my friends I've talked to, they're like, no, not Chandler, no. Like, that'd be crazy. Sorry, I sound very monotone right now, but like, just no.
Kat appears to have no doubt of her boyfriend's innocence, but maybe she just doesn't know him as well as she thinks she does. In the weeks following this interview, Chandler's darkest secrets would come to light. Secrets pertaining to more than just his parents' disappearance. But for now, detectives must get to the bottom of what happened to Bart and Krista, and quickly.
And his brother Mitchell, you think?
Mitchell?
Yeah, he's
a leaf in the wind.
okay.
Even if he tried, they could just like push him over and he'd like break.
Kat immediately furrowed her brow when detectives asked her if she thinks Chandler had some role in his parents' death, indicating stress and discomfort with the question. After all, compare that reaction to her reaction when she was asked about Mitch. Rather than furrowing, her eyebrows raised, which generally indicates surprise. She even seems amused by the suggestion. It's so unbelievable to her. She also keeps repeating no when they suggest Chandler's involvement. It can often be interpreted as a red flag when someone repeats something over and over, as repetition can be a way to build credibility. However, in this case, Kat may be responding to her own inner dialogue. The thoughts that must be running through her head are unfathomable, and it's almost like she's trying to convince herself that there's no way he could be capable of that.
When you get your farm this weekend, were you guys at school the whole time, or was he walking around the property at all?
I mean, we went on walks together, but walking's hard for him.
Sure.
It's not like he could run away and I wouldn't see him. But we were at each other the whole time. On Monday, he said he walked off by himself, but he was going to cry, so.
On Monday, he walked off by himself? Had a little cry?
Yeah, a little cry session.
What was he upset about if Mom had texted him on Sunday saying that...
The job thing still.
Oh, the job thing?
Yeah.
When did he find out about the job? Was that Monday?
Yes. It was right after his appointment, because they, like, called him. HR did.
Okay. So, were you on the phone with Chandler and heard him yelling about being treated like a prisoner at his house?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay, tell me more about that.
When he wasn't allowed to leave.
And that was after the fall, right? When he was recovery / payback 2 weeks for the money that he owes them.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
What day was that?
Are you still talking about being a prisoner? I don't know.
No. Like recently?
It just sounds familiar.
Is that something that he normally complained about?
Yeah, like, he's only allowed to leave when his parents let him leave. Like, their house, their rules. Like, if they wanted him home, they'd be like, no, you can't go.
Everything about Kat's answer, the long pause before speaking, the glances around the room, and the vague answer are all red flags for signs of anxiety or concern. She seems uncomfortable and reluctant to speak negatively of him. However, she might also be glancing around because it's likely that Kat has many conversations with Chandler, so she's not always going to recall exactly when each conversation took place. Additionally, the fact that she can't remember what day the conversation occurred could be an indication that this sort of situation happens often. In text messages between Chandler and Kat, it's clear that he felt his parents were overbearing. In one, Chandler tells Kat he told his mom, "I won't be your prisoner anymore," and that, quote, she's actually trying to jail me when she knows I can be more comfortable somewhere else. In one instance, Chandler told Kat that she can't come over, and he can't leave the house because he owes his parents $1,200. When Kat offers to Venmo him the money, he says he can't take it because his parents see the transactions. The next day, Chandler tells her that he's still on lockdown, and Kat replies that she doesn't understand why his parents are being weird and selective on when she can see him. In an even more concerning series of messages, Chandler tells Kat that his mom wants him to go to the cabin, but he's going to tell her he has plans with Kat and threatens to end his own life. Kat replies cryptically that he's so close to freedom. Chandler then states that he's, quote, not gonna tell them with you there. You don't have to be there to watch them hit me. Chandler might have conflict with his parents frequently where they forbid him from leaving the home, so Kat is maybe accustomed to Chandler complaining about this.
Is his dad a strict father? You know, a lot of dads are overly strict.
Like, he's strict, but, like, he still makes jokes, laughs with them. Like I said, fishes with them. The prisoner thing, I think he was just being dramatic. Like, what kid wouldn't call their parent a prisoner if they're, like, not allowed to leave often? Or, like, they want to go do something, their parents are like, no, you know?
Yeah.
Like, that's just my perspective. I'm not trying to be like, no. It's like, it just sounds like a normal kid thing to say to me.
Also, Chandler isn't a kid. He's 23 years old. However, even Kat is referring to him as a kid. It's as though she subconsciously recognizes his immaturity. While Kat wouldn't describe the Haldersons as overly strict parents, there's no telling how Chandler must have felt as their son. Based on the information she gave, they definitely seem overbearing and a little more involved in Chandler's life than the average parents would be, given that he is in reality a grown man. It seems like they bossed him around and treated him like a child. As well, Chandler's parents may have been overbearing as a response to their son's personality, his immaturity and inability to face stressors like an adult. He clearly had severe emotional problems, such as a severe lack of assertiveness and poor anger control. Individuals raised in this kind of environment tend to be immature, are less self-motivated and self-reliant, and have trouble bouncing back when things don't go well.
Do you guys think it's Chandler or something? We're just making sure that we're okay, because you're asking a lot of questions about him. But that's what my friends and I were talking about. We're like, okay, he's like the only one who lives with them, so, and like, he's the only one I have a relationship with. Like, I'm not, you know, Caitlin, I can't answer questions about Mitch. Right. But it's still like, because like, the shock I will feel, and like, I think I'll just be so mentally up if like, I find out he took that. Like, it just seems not Chandler at all. Yeah.
It sounds like the once confident Kat is starting to bend to the idea that Chandler had something to do with this. She's even beginning to imagine how she would feel if it were the truth. Kat is very animated and expressive. She seems to be using a lot of hand gestures here because being comedic seems to help her when talking about difficult or uncomfortable things. It seems like she falls back on humor to cope with stress or other emotions she might be feeling.
So you don't think there's any way that Chandler's involved in the disappearance?
No, I told Liz that, like, if it's Chandler, I'm going to be severely mentally fucked up after this. Like, I just can't see it being him. Like,
as well, when she states that she doesn't think Chandler did it, her palms are up. Palms up is generally considered a low-confidence body position, meaning that she may be feeling unsure about this statement.
If it was, would you help him?
Fuck no, I'm sorry. Excuse my French. Like, that's fucking crazy. Like, no. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I can't stand blood. Like, blood scares me. Like, dead bodies. Like, I was good at dissections, but, like, that's animals. But, like, killing people, especially, like, Mr. and Mrs. Halderson, I'm sorry. That's, like, different levels of fucked up.
Okay.
Like, I'm sorry that I'm freaking out now, but, like,
Her hand gestures here seem to get shaky. She's almost trying to push the officer's idea away as if she completely rejects the idea and wouldn't want to be associated with it. Also notice that she chuckles a few times. Again, it seems like she uses humor to get herself through stress. But here her distress has superseded her usual jovial and animated responses. She says she's freaking out, and that's definitely true.
So you had nothing to do with their disappearance?
No.
You don't think Chandler did?
No.
You think anybody, Mitchell, you think he would have anything to do with it?
No, I just can't see people wanting to hurt them. Like, that's the thing.
Okay.
So that's why we're so worried. Like, we don't know who would do this to them.
What would the possibility be for us to take your cell phone and analyze it? We're trying to verify some things that
So you have all the timestamps,
say.
right? So, I mean, you have all the pictures. So we have a guy that could download it while you're here. Like, you wouldn't have to leave it with us.
He can limit what he looks at.
I'm not gonna lie,
So we don't care about those.
Okay.
We don't. All we care about is the text messages from you, Chandler, Snapchat history, any social media stuff, and we're really just looking for probably, what would you say, the first until
today.
July 1st until today?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Locations, what she said.
But yeah, if there's any like inappropriate photos, I totally don't care about those.
Can I get a pinky? You can't break pinky promises, but it's only going to be from July 1st.
So
yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what you want.
I would like a pinky on that.
I can pinky you.
Awesome.
Her hesitancy could possibly be a cover-up for her not wanting detectives to see any incriminating evidence that could be in her phone. On the other hand, personal photos are a very feasible reason to be anxious about another person going through your device. She appears to take time to weigh the pros and cons before she ultimately decides to hand over her phone.
So in cases like this, disappearance cases, things we like to do to people that, especially like the house, Chandler's house, we like to get consensual, what we call DNA, buccal swabs from people. It's not down the throat or up the nose.
They don't want to draw blood or anything fun.
I'm scared of needles so bad.
Literally, you open
Q-tip,
your mouth.
I rub one cheek, I rub the other, and we're done. Maybe less than 10 seconds. That's your call. Just helps.
Because obviously, your DNA is probably going to be in the house, right? You were showering there.
Yeah.
Sneezing.
You know what I mean?
So see my hair on her hairbrush, right? Use her hair dryer.
So it's just like, we just gotta say that you are the person that we're collecting.
Fair enough.
I actually have one.
I don't know if I want a sweaty binder one.
Kat is given a sweaty binder buccal swab. All the while, the conversation with detectives drags on. She's not as conversational or energetic as she once was, and her patience seems to be running low. She's very likely experiencing the onset of mental exhaustion, given that this interrogation has gone on for over 3 hours with no sign of wrapping up. Because Kat wasn't under arrest and not charged with any crime, she was entirely free to refuse the request to provide a sample. However, even when officers are fairly certain that they know who committed a crime, they will often perform evidence clearing, where they take samples from people who aren't suspects in order to clear them of the crime and to determine the origin of any unknown samples. This happens for many things like DNA, fingerprints, blood types, and even footprints. As far as her phone is concerned, there is also a right to refuse surrendering a phone to law enforcement. In Kat's case, if she refuses a phone search or a DNA swab, the only recourse investigators would have is to obtain a warrant for both. It's unclear that investigators would have had enough evidence to show probable cause for either warrant. An attorney would advise you to always refuse to give a DNA sample or provide access to your electronic devices. Even if a person isn't a suspect, it's highly likely the sample will end up in the FBI's CODIS database, the Combined DNA Index System. This can later be used to match newly found and unknown DNA samples to known records for a positive match, and gives the police state a greater ability to ensnare both guilty and innocent alike in any possible future investigation. It can also work retroactively, so that once you submit that sample, it may match up to previously obtained unknown samples, leading to additional legal headaches. It's better, whenever possible, to simply remain off the radar. While DNA matches are generally considered to be as perfect a match as you can get, sloppy evidence collection can easily entangle innocent people in rather serious investigations. CODIS hit a milestone in 2021, with 20 million records now in the system. As of April 2021, CODIS was used in about 550,000 investigations, not something anyone would want to be innocently caught up in.
Do we know when Chandler's going to be done?
Yeah, I think they're done.
Yeah.
They, sounds like he's not quite as cooperative as you.
Okay. Any reason why? It's probably worried you guys are going to be like, Chandler did it. Okay. You know? I think that's everyone's fear.
Yeah.
Like, no one wants to be accused of killing their parents. I'm also, I think, just a very understanding person that will look for the best in everything. But,
yeah. Well, right now, because he's not being so cooperative or forthcoming, his parents are missing. It looks like they're going to take him into custody.
Are you serious?
Mm-hmm. I don't know what the charges are yet, but right now it's just going to be because of the missing persons investigation and him
lying
to the detectives. Why he's lying, I mean, we're all wondering.
Tonight.
You probably know him best. Why do you think he's not being truthful?
Doesn't want to depend on him, I guess. Can I talk to him before he goes or no?
Mm-mm. I think they've already walked him down. Why?
That's great.
I mean, you've been super cooperative in trying to get your phone back. If it's not going to be done anytime soon, we can get you a ride somewhere, have someone pick you up.
Can I get a ride back to Chandler's? That's where my car is, and I'm supposed to meet his brother there.
That's going to be something else. I'm glad you said that. So they're probably going to want to leave. They're going to leave your car there.
No.
At the house because he was in it all weekend.
No, I'm sorry.
And
I have places to be. That's my car. Like, if I'm being cooperative, why do you have to take my car?
Because Chandler's not, and he was in your car. So there's chance that there's DNA in there that we need to get.
But don't I have to, like, consent to that, or you need, like, a court order or something?
Oh, because it's at his house. They're looking at writing a warrant at the house. So if they write a warrant at the house, your car's in the driveway, they're going to want, because he was in there.
Kat appears pretty fed up at this point, both with the extensive questioning and the detective's demands. Seeing as she still has work and school to get to, she's reasonably devastated about having to hand over her car. It's not easy or fun to feel like you're being punished for being cooperative by having your things confiscated. It's important to note that a search warrant must be specific about the places to be searched and the items to be seized. However, this specificity requirement doesn't have to be as precise as some people think. For example, a warrant may give officers the right to search a house, attached buildings, e.g. garage, and any vehicles on the property. The key issue here would be how vehicles were listed on the warrant. The warrant may actually name her car specifically, or it may be more generic, such as vehicles on the property. If it's sufficiently generic and could be interpreted to include her car, then it's legitimately a subject to search, impound, and process for evidence. Perhaps the thought of having her clothing and the vehicle that transports her to her job makes Kat feel like there are still pieces of her life that are real and reliable. After all, she's likely still registering the fact that the guy she's been dating for 2 years isn't the person she thought he was, and that this major aspect of her life was a lie. She has every right to be mentally and emotionally fatigued, and this fatigue could be what's making her push back against the detectives.
So there's, like, no way I can talk to him at all.
It's downstairs.
Is that where the, like, jail is?
Yeah, the area.
So, what exactly did detectives find that led to Chandler's sudden arrest? The answer isn't easy to stomach. The same afternoon that Chandler was being interrogated, police received groundbreaking information from none other than Kat's mother, Dolce, and her girlfriend, Cress. Dolce told police that she thought Chandler's behavior had been strange lately, and she'd actually begun to believe he was using some kind of narcotic. Oddly, an officer also described Chandler's pupils as looking like pinpoints. But this wasn't the only story she had to tell. On Monday, July 5th, Chandler visited the farm without Kat and asked Cress if he could use her pool, to which Cress consented. Both her and Dolce were present at the farm that day, and not long after Chandler walked away from the house and disappeared towards the pool, the couple resolved to go for a swim as well. The two hopped on Cress's tractor and made their way across the field towards the pool. However, as they rode along, they saw no sign of Chandler. What they did see through the open doors of the large barn was Chandler's car. The car was parked on the opposite side of the barn, near the wooded area of the farm. Once they got closer, they could see that the trunk was open and Chandler wasn't anywhere in sight. After a minute, they simply continued on their way to the pool. A few minutes later, while they were swimming, they both spotted Chandler walking along the edge of the woods near where his car was parked. He walked away from the tree line and directly towards them. Once he got into the pool, the women noticed that he seemed to splash his chest, arms, and face with the water, as if washing himself off. Then, after staring off into space for a few moments, Chandler left suddenly. Cress made a haunting comment to police, stating that she had recently noticed something strange: vultures circling the woods on the property. Police inspected the woods near where Chandler had been seen, and it wasn't long before they made their first gut-churning discovery: a male human torso. The arms and head were completely missing, and the legs were cut off above the knee. Just as disturbing, Chandler had described that his father wore those cheesy dad joke shirts, and the torso was found still wearing a t-shirt with a joke about sarcasm on it. Investigators also found several cutting tools, including scissors, a saw, bolt cutters, and a long blade, discarded in an empty oil drum by the barn. This was enough to charge Chandler with his father's murder. Interestingly, the medical examiner would later note that there were noticeable differences in the marks left by the tools used to dismember the torso, which could possibly indicate that more than one person made the marks. However, his mother Krista was still missing. She wouldn't remain missing for long, though. In fact, Kat would be the one to lead police to Krista about a week later.
Anything you want to tell us right away?
When we met yesterday, because I have been keeping up with the media, I haven't been watching any of the trials for my own mental health, and he was catching me up.
Notice here how she's now cuddling with the stuffed animal, clearly in distress and seeking a comfort tool, even though it's an item typically considered childish. It also provides a bit of a barrier between herself and the detectives, who are tearing her world apart as they find out the truth.
When the Wisconsin River was mentioned, we were mulling over it. I was. And I recalled taking a screenshot of him near the Wisconsin River because we share Snapchat locations with each other. Mm-hmm. And he wasn't responding to me, and he always snaps me. Mm-hmm. And so I just have it putting him there at July 3rd at in the morning. Okay. It's from Snapchat. I don't know if you use that, but that's him by the Wisconsin River off of Gulf Road. Okay. And that's the 8:58 in the morning. Sure. And then my phone always tells me what day it is. So it's July 3rd, 8:58 a.m. Okay. And I placed him there 4 minutes before, so 54.
Okay. Have you been to that spot? Do you know?
I don't know if it's that specific spot, but we used to swim on the Wisconsin River. Okay. And it's one of the spots we would just go to. Mm-hmm. And I've only been there maybe 3 times. Okay. But he's gone swimming there a couple times. Okay. Because when you use Snapchat, when you open up the Snap, open up the app, that's when it's going to update your location. Mm-hmm. If you don't open up the app, your location won't update at all. Mm-hmm. And I was like, hey, where you at? Where you at? You're not responding to me on Snapchat. Mm-hmm. And we ended up calling, and he just said he was in a dead zone. I was like, what are you doing out there? Mm-hmm. I think over the phone I was like, are you swimming in the Wisconsin River after his fall? That's not safe. Mm-hmm. What did he say he was doing? He said he was running errands to get CBD.
Okay.
And, for the pain. Yeah, he said that's where his guy was, like, because they were going to give it to him for free or something.
Okay.
So he could just try it out.
So he said his guy was going to meet him where his location was? Like,
no, he was driving there.
Okay.
So I think it was all over call, like, a couple weeks ago. But I think he was trying to say, like, he was driving back. And,
so he never says he's actually there for a period of time? Where his location is by the...
No, but when you're in a car, it shows you in a little car driving.
Mm-hmm.
So if he was moving, it would have said that.
And he wasn't?
No, his location was just sitting there standing. And that means he's sat there.
Krista's remains were found by the Wisconsin River in the area where Kat pinged Chandler's location on July 3rd. Most disturbing of all was that when the police arrived in the area, they noted that it appeared familiar. During their investigation, they had noticed a photo of Chandler leaning against a distinct-looking elm tree. They soon discovered that same tree in the area, and approximately 100 yards behind the tree Chandler was photographed with were Krista's remains. Not only that, but the text that Chandler got from his mom on Sunday, July 4th was examined. As Chandler points out in his interrogation video, Krista had sent him a text saying that they were fine and that they would be attending the Independence Day parade that day. The date that this text was sent, July 4th, was inconsistent with the fact that this big annual parade had actually taken place the day before, on July 3rd. When police tracked Krista's phone back to where it was when she sent that text, her phone was nowhere near the family cabin or anywhere in Langlade County. In fact, Krista's phone showed itself to be located inside of her house. After this discovery, police later found Krista's phone in the garage, wrapped in tinfoil and stuffed inside of a hidden shoe. All signs pointed to Chandler having been the one to send that text message to himself. He was almost immediately hit with additional charges concerning the murder and dismemberment of his mother. There's no evidence to suggest that Kat was ever involved in or even aware of the murders of Bart and Krista Halderson, and she has since been cleared of all suspicion. Kat was just another victim of Chandler's convoluted web of lies, and she wasn't the only one. Quite frankly, everything Chandler had told everyone around him about his life was a complete lie. Chandler had been attending Madison College, but he had stopped attending classes over a year ago and never told anyone. He'd even pretended to be a Madison College administration member and communicated with his parents, both over email and over the phone. This was all to make it appear to his parents that he was still enrolled. There was never a job waiting for him at SpaceX. He'd never secured an apartment in Florida with plans to move himself and Kat there. He very likely faked the fall or caused the fall on purpose right before he was scheduled to leave for Florida in order to avoid facing that lie. He'd never been on a police scuba diving team, but what he'd certainly done was manage to convince everyone in his life that this was his reality. It's worthy to note that pathological lying and conning behavior such as this can be signs of psychopathy or antisocial personality disorder. It's also a fact that narcissists tend to be quite grandiose and tell stories about themselves that don't fit reality. To a narcissist, the idea of being normal or like others is intolerable. Naturally, these individuals will also act to protect their fantasy lives. However, going to the extreme of committing murder is atypical, but, of course, there are always exceptions. Unbeknownst to the people around him, Chandler's false life started long before this incident. Interviews with ex-associates and former partners of Chandler's revealed that he was a long-time compulsive liar and serial cheater. He'd told a lot of people different stories about where he worked, who he was, and about his relationship status. There's evidence that suggests that he'd had intimate contact with both men and women over the last year, with the latest tryst occurring just 2 months prior to his parents' disappearance. One of the girls that Chandler dated told the police that he claimed his mother once faked having a stroke to prevent him being able to leave the house and grounded him for an entire summer after he came home with a hickey. While she wasn't sure if he was lying about these outlandish claims, she was able to tell police that Chandler seemed to resent his father for not stepping up when his mother was overbearing with him and claimed that he never did anything on his behalf. In another instance, Chandler texted a friend about being caught cheating on a girlfriend, though it's unclear if he's talking about Kat. He told his friend that his girlfriend was going to call the other girl to confront her and find out what happened. Chandler then asks for his friend to answer the call instead and use a voice-changing app to make his voice sound female. Interestingly, there's evidence that Chandler was also caught by his parents using a voice changer to try to talk to them from his fake job. This was just one of the many instances where Chandler was caught in a lie. According to one of Chandler's ex-girlfriends, Dakota, he'd been seeing both her and Kat at the same time. Though he told Dakota that Kat was just a friend, they both confronted him. While Kat forgave him, Dakota did not.
One of my close friends used to be his ex. We all thought he was this awful, horrible person. And then, I finally met him in person, and I was like, oh, we both really like Star Wars.
Still, she had some very interesting things to tell police. Like many others, she attested to Chandler talking about his mother being overbearing and over-involved in his life. Even more noteworthy, though, was that Dakota also said that Chandler claimed he'd been to a doctor and diagnosed as a psychopath, telling her, quote, "Makes sense now, doesn't it?" But Dakota wasn't the only one that Chandler made this claim to as well. One of his friends and ex-roommates, Alexander, described Chandler as a pathological liar, cold-hearted, and emotionally distanced. Not only did Alexander suspect that Chandler stole money from him while they were living together, but that while proclaiming his innocence, Chandler made an eerie comment that he could look for the money in his safe, but also, quote, "Don't judge me for what you find." Alexander never looked in the safe, likely because on one occasion Chandler told him that he thought he might be a sociopath. Most people who knew Chandler had no clue of the reality of his life. That is, until Bart uncovered one of his son's secrets. He'd begun to suspect that his son was lying about his education after noticing several grammatical errors in the emails Chandler said he received from school staff, as well as several other red flags. Some of the red flags included a meeting with someone from Chandler's college being canceled, so someone else named Daniel Spieth called Bart. Bart later told Krista that the person he talked to sounds just like Chaz, the nickname Chandler's parents used for him. Police would later discover that the email accounts of Daniel Spieth had the same birth date as Chandler, and that the sign-in phone number was the same as Chandler's cell phone. Still, Bart didn't know this at the time. He attempted on a few occasions to gently confront Chandler about some of his lies, and even emailed him saying, "Did you email HR to inquire about your paycheck? Unless there's something you are not telling us, they have had ample time to pay you." So he posed as his son, called the school, and asked for a copy of his unofficial transcripts, and was told he wasn't a student there.
Hi, I'm trying to get an appointment scheduled to meet with somebody to maybe just get a copy of the transcript and also a printed copy of a certificate that was earned and other degree verification. Do you have your old account info? Like you used to be Halderson C at Madison College. Now, how far back does that account go that you're looking at? Like when was the first class taken?
18, spring of 2018. So I don't see that you were admitted in any program.
You said they were, it's the IT degrees in there, right?
No, those are just classes. You might have just took the classes but not be in the program.
Was the internship from the spring show up in there?
No.
Okay, thank you for your help.
Bart told Chandler that they'd both be attending a meeting up at his school that was scheduled for July 1st, the same evening that Chandler had supposedly helped his parents pack up their things for their weekend getaway. When it was time to head off to their meeting the evening of the 1st, before he and Bart could walk outside to the car, Chandler killed him. Bart was killed by a gunshot wound to the head. It's fair to assume that after that, he waited for his mother to get home from work and killed her too. It's still unclear exactly how Krista died. Yet even after Chandler's arrest, the case took a strange turn. Given Kat's reaction during her interview, you may be surprised to know that following Chandler being charged, he and Kat stayed in contact. While in jail, Chandler used a jail messenger app to text Kat, and the two also spoke frequently on the phone. Their conversations reveal a different side of Kat than the one we saw during the interrogations. On September 9th, 2021, Chandler texted Kat saying, "Good morning, wifey. Today is court, so I'm sorry if you have to hear about it." Kat responded, "Good morning, hubby. I love you and everything is going to be okay. Just do your hair, wear your glasses, and show people you don't look like a monster like how they're trying to say you are on the news. Remember to relax and don't be too intense." The two made plans to buy an espresso machine and save so they had money for when they both attended school, and shop for new clothes when Chandler got out of jail. Chandler was optimistic that not only would he be out of prison soon, but that he would be able to get a job quickly. He also messaged her saying that, "I got you still, and that's all I need." In calls from prison, Chandler was able to speak with Kat and her mother on the phone.
Are you going to stay there until January?
I don't know about myself. I'm in a mental health pod, so they might put me in general population eventually.
But trying to stay there
Yeah, I will.
is more safe for you, you know?
Yeah.
I think if you go to the population, try to stay away from other people, you know?
Yeah.
And sometimes it is better to say what happened. Like, if you don't say what are you there for, people thinking that you are there for something else, maybe. I don't want you to be hurt.
Well, don't worry about it. I'm all on the TV, so everyone knows I actually belong in jail.
Oh,
and no one's going to be thinking I'm a snitch, so don't worry.
Oh, okay. Oh.
Plus, if you know of Dane County Prison, anywhere that I would be housed, just given what they're thinking of me, like I'm a crazy person, I'm going to have my own room, and I won't really have to worry about other people. I appreciate you worrying about me and caring for me. I know, yeah, the news has made it sound very bad, but just talking to my lawyers and everything, it's much different. The news has putting a very bad spin on everything.
I know.
I hope you know that.
I don't know what happened, and I don't need. Everybody has their own reasons. Huh?
I definitely can't talk about the case over the phone.
Right. But I wanted to tell you that everybody has their own things.
In a text, Chandler tells Kat, "It's a lot to have to read what people say about me. Not super fun. But I understand that a lot of people are angry and or sad, and it's super easy to blame everything on me at this point in the case." Kat tells him, "Everyone is pointing fingers, and it's a lot easier to point at you instead of imagining what else could have happened." In another call, Chandler and Kat discuss his next court appearance.
I think they're delaying everything as much as they can, so we don't have time to prepare.
Well, got your glasses, got your colored pencil to highlight important things. I don't think I would last in jail. I don't know how you do it.
Yeah, not well. Mentally. Other than that, I seem to be doing actually pretty well.
Well, I'm happy. I was worried you're going to get beat up or something.
No. People stay clear of me.
Fair.
Yeah. I would too. I miss your eyes. Your nose.
I like yours.
That's crooked. Maybe I can get beat up in here and someone will punch it so hard it fixes itself. I love you and I miss you.
Stop. I love you.
Even after Chandler's incarceration, Kat continued to foot the bill for him. In their jail messages, they talked about how Kat had paid Chandler's lawyers. He thanks her and texts back, "Oof, sorry, hun. You'll be well compensated when I'm out." At one point, they discuss maybe selling some of Chandler's drawings that he's created while in prison, and he messages her saying, I'm drawing a bit more than I used to. Maybe you could sell my pictures to someone and make money for your mattress. They're not good pictures, but I'm apparently famous, or rather infamous at this point. I don't know, just an idea that might help you out. You could sell them and who knows, it could get you something nice. Kat responds, LOL, wishing you the best of luck with the love letter. If I sell the photos, I'm just scared people are going to find out I'm the girlfriend, and I really don't want to deal with that right now. One of the reasons for moving was due to a reporter showing up to the house and a not-so-good experience. Chandler answers, You know I can't talk over this, baby. If anything, I'd have lawyers catch you up. And Kat texts back, I know it's not in your best interest to talk about it over the jail app, LOL. The last message we can see exchanged between the two was from Kat on September 30th, 2021, reading, Hey, since you didn't call, I'm going to assume something happened. I hope you're okay and safe and are able to sleep well tonight. I love you a lot. It's unclear why Kat continued communication with Chandler after his arrest. Perhaps she was in denial. After all, it was a huge pill to swallow. The idea that her boyfriend had so barbarically slayed both of his parents was unthinkable. However, before the trial rolled around, Kat experienced a change of heart. She'd accepted that Chandler's life was a complete and utter lie, though the details of how or when exactly this occurred are unknown. Chandler pleaded not guilty in September of 2021. However, he refused to talk to his appointed lawyers about the case or testify at his own trial. His trial began in January, and due to his lack of cooperation and the pile of evidence against him, the case was practically open and shut. Among the evidence gathered was surveillance footage from a Fleet Farm department store that showed Chandler purchasing a tarp. This tarp would also later be found on the farm, rolled up and discarded in a garbage can. Also found on Cress's property was a white plastic grocery bag at the bottom of a recycling bin. Inside the bag, there were several balled-up paper towels, which were covered in a substance that appeared to be old, dried blood. In addition, Chandler was caught on surveillance camera picking up some large bags of ice from a Target store on July 3rd and from Quick Trip on July 1st. Chandler's internet search history also ended up being one of the biggest clues to his involvement. On July 7th, less than a week after his parents went missing, Chandler searched for body found in Wisconsin, woman's body found in Wisconsin, Wisconsin dismembered body found, dead body found in Wisconsin, body found in Milwaukee River 2021, and Bart and Krista. Through the investigation, neighbors also provided some damning evidence. One claimed to have smelled burning wood followed by an odor of barbecued meat in the air on the night of July 1st. Another neighbor provided security camera footage that showed a flickering light emanating from the Halderson home during the very early morning hours of July 2nd, from approximately midnight until about 4:30 a.m. Only one question remains. Where had Chandler stored the bodies while Kat was over for the weekend? It appears we may never know. Further investigation of the Haldersons' home uncovered the presence of more than 200 bone fragments in the fireplace. The use of a blue light exposed traces of blood in front of the fireplace and on the basement floor of the home that had been cleaned, just as Chandler had reported. However, the amount of blood present was way more than anything a cut on the toe, a nosebleed, or scratches could have produced. Then, of course, there's the fact that in the days following their disappearances, Chandler was spotted in both areas where his parents' remains were discovered. The jury would deliberate for only 2 hours, after which they would find Chandler Halderson guilty of the intentional homicide of his parents, Bart and Krista Halderson. He was also found guilty of 2 counts of giving false information regarding a missing person, and 2 counts of mutilating a body. Chandler requested not to be present at his sentencing, but his request was denied, and he was forced to attend. At his sentencing on March 17, 2022, Chandler's defense team pleaded for the possibility of parole, but the judge would state that in order to fulfill his duty of ensuring the safety of the public, he had to hand down a sentence that would guarantee that Chandler would never walk the streets again. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Chandler only had one thing to say at his sentencing. He made a brief statement saying that he planned to appeal the verdict and that if any criminal lawyers were watching and wanted to take on his case, they should reach out to him as soon as possible. And he wasn't kidding. On March 30th, 2023, Chandler submitted a notice of no merit appeal for his conviction. This is exactly what it sounds like, an appeal filed by a lawyer who doesn't believe there's actual reasonable grounds for an appeal. Chandler is currently serving his life sentence at the Dodge Correctional Institute in Waupun, Wisconsin.
The Halderson Case, an analytical autopsy of a life built on lies. Case file 21CFA00876. Subject: Chandler M. Halderson. Classification: familicide, deception, dismemberment. Status: closed. Subject incarcerated. Introduction: The veneer of normalcy. On the surface, the Halderson family of Windsor, Wisconsin represented a familiar portrait of American suburban life. Bart Halderson, 50, was a hard-working accountant and a purveyor of dad jokes. His wife, Krista, 53, was a beloved and reliable colleague. They lived in a comfortable home with their youngest son, 3-year-old Chandler. To the outside world, and even to his own parents, Chandler was the embodiment of a promising future. He was, by all accounts, a model son, an overachiever juggling an IT degree at Madison Technical College, volunteering with a prestigious police scuba diving team, and holding down a job at a local insurance company. The pinnacle of his achievements was a coveted position awaiting him at SpaceX, Elon Musk's pioneering aerospace company. His life was a blueprint for success, and his parents, Bart and Krista, were his biggest supporters, filled with immense pride. This idyllic image, however, was a meticulously crafted illusion. It was a fragile facade, constructed from a foundation of pathological lies, so pervasive and complex that its architect would ultimately choose murder over the prospect of its collapse. The case of Chandler Halderson is not merely a story of a missing couple. It is a profound and disturbing exploration of narcissistic injury, antisocial personality traits, and the catastrophic consequences that unfold when a fantasy world is threatened by the intrusion of reality. This analysis will deconstruct the layers of deception, examine the psychological drivers behind the subject's actions, and trace the investigative path that peeled back the veneer of normalcy to reveal the horrifying truth hidden beneath. It is a cautionary tale of how the pressure to maintain a lie can escalate into the ultimate act of betrayal and violence. Part 1. The Architecture of Deceit. To understand the homicides of Bart and Krista Halderson, one must first understand the alternate reality their son had engineered. Chandler's life was not one of achievement but of elaborate, long-term fraud. This was not simple teenage exaggeration. It was a systematic, multifaceted campaign of disinformation targeting those closest to him, designed to project an image of success while masking a reality of failure and stagnation. The academic fraud. The cornerstone of Chandler's deception was his academic career. While his parents believed he was diligently pursuing an IT degree at Madison College, he had, in fact, dropped out over a year prior. He was failing his courses and had ceased all academic activity. To maintain this lie, he engaged in a complex charade: fabricated communications. Chandler created fake email accounts, impersonating college administrators and advisors. He would draft and send correspondence to his father, providing updates on his progress, discussing fabricated tuition issues, and even scheduling phantom meetings. Forensic analysis of these emails later revealed grammatical errors and an informal tone inconsistent with official university communications red flags that a concerned and detail-oriented accountant like Bart Halderson would eventually notice. Voice modulation. When his father's suspicions grew, leading him to request phone conversations with college officials, Chandler reportedly used voice-changing applications to impersonate faculty members. This demonstrates a significant level of premeditation and technical sophistication in his efforts to perpetuate the fraud. The college student persona was essential. It provided him with a legitimate reason for living at home, dependent on his parents, and justified his daily schedule, which largely consisted of playing video games and interacting with his girlfriend. The professional facade. Building upon the lie of his academic success, Chandler constructed an equally impressive and entirely false professional identity. The American Family Insurance job. He claimed to be employed by a reputable insurance company. This job was a source of constant domestic friction. He concocted elaborate stories about payroll issues, human resources, errors, and problems with direct deposits to explain his chronic lack of income and his inability to pay his parents the modest rent they requested. Text messages between Chandler and his girlfriend Kat reveal his parents' growing frustration with his financial excuses. This fabricated employment served as a crucial tool to deflect from his financial dependence and feign responsibility. The SpaceX fantasy. The most grandiose of his lies was the job offer from SpaceX in Florida. This was the capstone of his fictional life, a narrative of genius and ambition that promised a future of prestige and financial independence. It was a powerful tool of manipulation, not only impressing his parents, but also solidifying his relationship with his girlfriend, who made plans to move to Florida with him. The impending move created a timeline and a sense of forward momentum, masking the fact that his life was completely stalled. The fall he sustained down the stairs, which he claimed resulted in a concussion and nerve damage, was suspiciously convenient. It occurred just before his scheduled departure for Florida, providing him with a medical excuse to lose the job and delay the inevitable exposure of the lie. This incident, whether intentionally self-inflicted or a genuine accident that he opportunistically exploited, was a critical plot device in his ongoing narrative. The police scuba team. To add a layer of heroism and civic duty to his persona, Chandler claimed to be a member of a local police scuba diving and rescue team. This lie, like the others, was designed to inspire respect and admiration. It painted him as a brave and responsible member of the community, a stark contrast to the reality of an unemployed young adult living a parasitic existence. Each lie was a load-bearing wall in the architecture of his false identity. The removal of any single one threatened the structural integrity of the entire edifice. It was this interconnectedness that made the impending discovery of his academic failure not just an embarrassment, but an existential threat to the entire world he had built. Part 2. The First Cracks, a Disappearance. The carefully constructed world of Chandler Halderson began to fracture on Thursday, the 1st of July 2021. This was the day his father, Bart, had scheduled a meeting with Madison College officials to discuss his son's academic standing, a meeting Chandler knew would expose everything. The pressure had reached its breaking point. The Last Supper and the fabricated trip. According to Chandler's initial narrative to police, the evening of July 1st was mundane. He cooked dinner for his parents. They discussed a planned weekend getaway to their family cabin in Langlade County, a 3-hour drive away. He claimed he helped them pack. This narrative was the first active lie following the murders, a story designed to create a time buffer and misdirect any potential investigation. He told authorities and friends that his parents were picked up by a mysterious couple on the morning of Friday, July 2nd, to be driven to the cabin. This detail was a clumsy but necessary invention to explain why his parents' vehicles were still at the home. It introduced an unknown variable, an external party, onto which suspicion could theoretically be cast. The performance of concern. Over the next few days, Chandler engaged in a meticulous performance of a worried son. The co-worker's visit. When Krista failed to show up for work on Friday, an unprecedented occurrence, a concerned colleague visited the Halderson home. Chandler calmly delivered his story about the cabin trip, temporarily assuaging the co-worker's fears. This early test of his narrative was passed successfully. Digital deception. On Sunday, July 4th, Chandler sent a text message to his own phone from his mother's phone, which he had kept. The message read, "I assume she said White Lake today," referencing the town's Independence Day parade. This was a calculated move to create a digital proof of life. However, it was a critical error. The White Lake parade had taken place on July 3rd, not the 4th. Furthermore, cell tower data would later confirm that Krista's phone was at or near the Halderson home when the text was sent, not in Langlade County. Filing the report. After several days of feigned concern and fielding calls from his parents' worried friends and colleagues, Chandler officially filed a missing persons report on Wednesday, July 7th. This was a necessary step to maintain his credibility as the concerned son. In his report, he repeated the story of the cabin trip and the unknown couple. Neighborhood canvassing. In a bold display of feigned desperation, Chandler went door to door in his neighborhood, asking neighbors if they had seen his parents or had any security footage. This was a high-risk, high-reward performance. He was designed to solidify his image as a proactive, worried son in the eyes of the community. But it also invited scrutiny and drew attention to the case, potentially accelerating the investigation. During this period, his girlfriend, Kat, was a frequent presence at the house. She was both his alibi and his unwitting audience. Her presence normalized the situation, lending an air of domesticity to a home that was, in fact, a gruesome crime scene. She was a pawn in his psychological game, her belief in him a shield against the suspicions of others. The discovery by Chandler's brother, Mitchell, that the family cabin was untouched, dust-covered, and clearly unoccupied, was the first definitive piece of evidence that Chandler's story was a complete fabrication. The foundation of his misdirection had crumbled. With the cabin narrative debunked, the investigation turned its full attention to the last person to see Bart and Krista alive, their son. Part 3. The Interrogation, a Study in Deceptive Behavior. On the 8th of July 2021, Chandler Halderson was brought to the Dane County Sheriff's Office for questioning. The hours that followed provide a masterclass in the behavioral and linguistic tells of a deceptive individual under pressure. His interview, juxtaposed with the concurrent interview of his girlfriend Kat, reveals a stark contrast between manipulated innocence and calculated deceit. Chandler Halderson, The Anatomy of a Liar. From the outset, Chandler's demeanor was inconsistent with that of a grieving son desperate for answers. An analytical review of the interrogation footage reveals numerous indicators of deception and extreme psychological distress. Emotional cutoff and dazed state. Chandler spoke in a slow, deliberate monotone. He often stared blankly at the floor, appearing dissociated or in a daze. While investigators noted this could be a symptom of trauma, emotional cutoff, in this context, it is more likely indicative of an immense cognitive load. He was not accessing memories of a routine weekend. He was actively constructing and maintaining a complex lie, fact-checking his own narrative in real time to avoid contradictions. This requires significant mental energy, resulting in a subdued, robotic presentation. Lack of eye contact. His avoidance of eye contact was pervasive. While occasional breaks in eye contact are normal for memory recall, Chandler's near-constant gaze aversion suggests a subconscious unwillingness to face his questioners. The few moments he did make direct, sustained eye contact were during critical challenges to his story, such as his inquiry about a search warrant. This shift from avoidance to intense focus is not a sign of honesty, but rather an attempt to gauge the investigators' reactions and determine how much they knew. Self-soothing behaviors. Throughout the interview, Chandler engaged in repetitive self-soothing gestures. He covered his face with his hands, rubbed his chin, and created physical barriers with his arms. These are common pacifying behaviors used to manage extreme anxiety. For an innocent person, this anxiety would stem from the fear and uncertainty of their parents' fate. For Chandler, the anxiety stemmed from the fear of being caught. The bloody toe narrative. When confronted with the likelihood that blood evidence would be found in the home, Chandler preemptively offered a detailed and exaggerated story about cutting his toe on a broken fireplace glass panel. He described squirting blood in puddles that dripped down into the basement, a narrative far more dramatic than a simple cut would warrant. This is a classic tactic of a deceptive person. Introducing a kernel of truth, he may have cut his toe, and inflating it to account for incriminating evidence he knows exists. He was attempting to contaminate the crime scene with a plausible, innocent explanation for the presence of his own blood and the extensive cleaning he had undertaken. The slip of the tongue. At one point, when describing his visit to the police station, he stated he went to make a flight period before correcting himself. This Freudian slip is telling. He was not thinking about a missing persons report. His mind was on escape, on flight. Invoking his right to counsel. The moment detectives shifted tactics, directly confronting him with the fact that they knew he was lying and that his parents were deceased, his composure broke. He immediately invoked his right to an attorney. This is the last resort of a guilty person when their lies have failed and they are faced with irrefutable evidence. His chilling parting shots. You don't know the whole story, and I don't feel bad about what I did were moments where the mask slipped entirely, revealing a flash of the remorseless individual beneath. Kat, the unwitting accomplice. Kat's interview provides a poignant counterpoint. Her behavior, while at times immature and seemingly detached, was not deceptive. naivety and emotional immaturity. Her initial demeanor playing with a stuffed animal, her odd and protracted eating of a cookie she was allegedly allergic to, can be interpreted as signs of emotional immaturity and a failure to grasp the gravity of the situation. She was operating under the assumption that this was a standard interview about a missing persons case involving her boyfriend's parents, not a homicide investigation in which he was the prime suspect. Corroboration and defense. Initially, she corroborated Chandler's timeline and defended his character. She portrayed him as a non-emotional person, struggling in his own way, attempting to rationalize his flat affect. She was still under his manipulative influence, viewing events through the lens he had created for her. The slow dawn of horror. As the questioning intensified and detectives began to imply Chandler's involvement, her demeanor shifted. Her body language became more stressed, her brow furrowed, and she began to exhibit genuine shock and distress. Her repetition of no when asked if Chandler could be involved was not a practiced denial, but a reflection of her own internal struggle to reconcile the person she thought she knew with the monster the police were describing. Cooperation. Unlike Chandler, Kat was largely cooperative. She offered photos from her phone with timestamps and eventually consented to a phone download and a DNA swab. Her eventual frustration over the impounding of her car stemmed from a feeling of being punished for her cooperation, a sign that the reality of her new situation as a key witness in a double homicide was beginning to set in. The interrogation room became the stage where the fantasy of Chandler Halderson finally died. Under the pressure of skilled questioning, his carefully constructed narrative disintegrated, leaving only the cold, hard reality of his guilt. Part 4. The Unraveling. A trail of digital and physical evidence. While Chandler Halderson attempted to control the narrative inside the interrogation room, a multifaceted investigation was rapidly dismantling his lies in the outside world. A combination of digital forensics, physical evidence, and crucial witness testimony created an irrefutable timeline of murder, dismemberment, and disposal. The digital footprints. In the 21st century, it is nearly impossible to commit a crime without leaving a digital trail. Chandler's devices became a virtual witness to his actions. Snapchat location data. The most critical piece of digital evidence came from his girlfriend, Kat. While reviewing her phone, she recalled taking a screenshot of Chandler's Snapchat location on the morning of Saturday, July 3rd. The map showed his avatar stationary in a remote area along the Wisconsin River. This was the key that unlocked the location of Krista Halderson's remains. When he was on the phone with Kat, he claimed to be in a dead zone running errands, but the app's data showed he was immobile, contradicting his story. Google search history. Chandler's search history in the days following the murders was a direct window into his guilty conscience. He searched for terms like Wisconsin dismembered body found in Wisconsin, and the names of his parents. These searches demonstrated not the concern of a worried son, but the anxiety of a killer checking the news for any sign that his crimes had been discovered. Cell phone geolocation. Analysis of Bart and Krista's cell phones was damning. As previously mentioned, Krista's phone was shown to be at the Halderson residence on July 4th when it sent the proof of life text. Investigators later found the phone in the garage, wrapped in tin foil, a futile attempt to block its signal, and hidden inside a shoe. The physical evidence. The physical evidence painted a gruesome and undeniable picture of the events that transpired inside the Halderson home. The fireplace. Investigators made a horrifying discovery in the family's fireplace. Over 200 human bone fragments, later identified as belonging to Bart and Krista. This confirmed that Chandler had attempted to destroy his parents' remains by burning them. This aligned with a neighbor's testimony of smelling something akin to barbecued meat on the night of July 1st, and another neighbor's security camera capturing a flickering light from the home's chimney for several hours. In the early morning of July 2nd, blood evidence. Using luminol, a chemical that reacts with the iron in hemoglobin, investigators revealed extensive bloodstains on the basement floor and in front of the fireplace. Despite Chandler's attempts to clean the scene with hydrogen peroxide, the sheer volume of blood was far more than could be explained by a cut toe. The evidence pointed to a violent struggle and the subsequent dismemberment of the bodies. The disposal sites. The farm. Acting on information from Kat's mother, Dolce, and her partner, Cress, police searched their farm property. They recalled Chandler making a strange, solitary visit on July 5th. They had witnessed his car parked near a wooded area with the trunk open, and later saw him emerging from the woods and seemingly washing himself off in their pool. In those same woods, investigators found the dismembered torso of Bart Halderson. Nearby, in an oil drum, they found a collection of cutting tools, including saws and bolt cutters. The Wisconsin River. Guided by CAT Snapchat data, investigators searched the remote area where Chandler had been on July 3rd. There, they discovered the remains of Krista Halderson. The surveillance trail. Chandler's errands in the days following the murders were tracked via surveillance cameras from local stores. Ice purchases. He was seen on camera purchasing large bags of ice from Target and a Quick Trip gas station on July 1st and 3rd. Investigators theorized the ice was used to preserve his parents' remains before he could dispose of them, especially since his girlfriend was visiting the house. Tarp purchase. Footage from a Fleet Farm store showed him purchasing a tarp, an item commonly used in the transportation and disposal of human remains to prevent the spread of evidence. This tarp was later found discarded on the farm property. The convergence of this evidence was overwhelming. The digital data placed him at the disposal sites. The physical evidence confirmed the murders, dismemberment, and attempted destruction of the bodies. The surveillance footage documented his preparations for the disposal. Every lie he had told was systematically dismantled by a mountain of indisputable fact. Part 5. The Mind of a Killer. A Psychological Profile. The crimes of Chandler Halderson were not the result of a sudden, explosive rage. They were the culmination of a personality structure fundamentally incapable of coping with failure and shame. While a formal diagnosis can only be made by a qualified professional after extensive evaluation, his behavior, as documented in the investigation, is highly consistent with a severe personality disorder, most notably displaying traits of narcissistic personality disorder, NPD, and antisocial personality disorder, ASPD, pathological narcissism. Narcissism exists on a spectrum, but Chandler's actions point towards the pathological end, characterized by an all-consuming need to maintain a grandiose self-image. Grandiose fantasy. Chandler's entire life was a performance designed to elicit admiration. The SpaceX job, the police scuba team, the IT degree, these were not just lies. They were components of a fantasy self, a person of importance, intelligence, and heroism. This fantasy was necessary to regulate his fragile self-esteem. To be ordinary was, for him, an intolerable state of being. Parasitic lifestyle and entitlement. He lived a parasitic existence, completely dependent on the very parents he held in contempt. He felt entitled to their financial support, without feeling any reciprocal obligation. His frustration when they demanded he pay rent or get a legitimate job was not the reaction of a struggling young adult, but of a narcissist who believes the world owes him a living. Inability to tolerate narcissistic injury. A narcissistic injury is a perceived threat to a narcissist's grandiose self-concept. For Chandler, the imminent meeting at Madison College on July 1st represented a catastrophic narcissistic injury. The exposure of his academic failure would not just be embarrassing, it would shatter the entire fantasy self he had presented to the world. It would reveal him as a failure to his parents, his girlfriend, and his peers. The homicidal solution. In the mind of a pathological narcissist, the source of the injury must be eliminated. Bart Halderson, in his quest for the truth, became the primary threat. By scheduling the meeting, he was threatening to destroy Chandler's world. Therefore, in Chandler's distorted logic, Bart had to be destroyed first. Krista's murder likely followed because she was a witness and an inextricable part of the world that was about to collapse. He chose murder over the shame of exposure. The act of killing was, in a twisted way, an act of self-preservation, not of his physical self, but of his fantasy self. Antisocial, psychopathic traits. While his motives were narcissistic, his methods were chillingly antisocial. Pathological lying and manipulation. Lying was his default mode of communication. He manipulated everyone in his orbit, his parents with fake emails, his girlfriend with a fantasy future, and the police with a fabricated narrative. There is evidence he had a long history of this, with former partners describing him as a serial cheater and compulsive liar. Lack of empathy and remorse. His behavior following the murders was devoid of genuine grief or remorse. He played video games, hung out with his girlfriend, set off fireworks, and calmly lied to police while his parents' dismembered bodies were stored and disposed of. His post-arrest statement that he didn't feel bad about what he did is a stark admission of his profound lack of empathy. He viewed his parents not as human beings to be loved and respected, but as objects first as sources of financial support, narcissistic supply, and later as obstacles to be removed. Cold, calculated planning, the dismemberment, the use of ice for preservation, the purchase of a tarp, the careful selection of remote disposal sites, and the attempt to destroy evidence in the fireplace all point to a level of cold, calculated planning, not a crime of passion. He methodically and unemotionally went about the gruesome task of covering his tracks. Former friends even relayed that Chandler had once claimed to have been diagnosed as a psychopath and that he thought he might be a sociopath, suggesting a degree of self-awareness of his own malevolent nature. Chandler Halderson's psychology is that of a hollow man. Lacking a genuine, stable core identity, he constructed a false one. When that false identity was threatened, he revealed the void beneath a space devoid of empathy, morality, or the capacity for human connection. The violence was not an aberration. It was the logical final act for a person whose entire existence was predicated on a lie too big to maintain. Part 6. The Aftermath and the Certainty of Justice. The arrest and trial of Chandler Halderson brought his web of lies into the stark, unforgiving light of the public record. His behavior, both during the legal proceedings and while incarcerated, offered a final, unambiguous look into his character. The trial and conviction. Chandler's trial began in January 2022. He pleaded not guilty but refused to cooperate with his own defense team and declined to testify. The prosecution presented its case, methodically laying out the overwhelming digital, physical, and testimonial evidence. The jury's task was not to determine if he had committed the crimes, but simply to affirm the mountain of evidence before them. After deliberating for a mere 2 hours, the jury returned a verdict of guilty on all counts. 2 counts of first-degree intentional homicide, 2 counts of mutilating a corpse, 2 counts of hiding a corpse, 2 counts of giving false information regarding a missing person. On the 17th of March 2022, at his sentencing hearing, Chandler Halderson was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. His request to be absent from the sentencing was denied. In his only statement, he displayed no remorse, instead focusing on his own future, announcing his intent to appeal, and publicly soliciting appellate lawyers to take his case. It was a final, fitting display of his self-absorbed and defiant nature. The post-arrest relationship, a study in denial and manipulation. One of the most perplexing aspects of the case was the continued communication between Chandler and his girlfriend Kat following his arrest. Jailhouse messages and recorded phone calls reveal a disturbing dynamic. Continued manipulation. Chandler continued his manipulative charade from behind bars. He referred to Kat as his wifey and himself as her hubby, maintaining the fiction of their shared future. He blamed the media for putting a bad spin on the case and assured her that things were different than they seemed, never once admitting guilt. He continued to be a financial parasite, thanking her for paying his legal fees and promising to compensate her when he got out. Initial denial. For a period, Kat appeared to be in a state of profound denial. She offered him support, advised him on his appearance for court, show people you don't look like a monster, and expressed her love for him. It is a testament to the power of his manipulation that even after his arrest for the brutal murder of his parents, she clung to the image of the man she thought she knew. The eventual break. By the time of the trial, Kat had ceased communication and accepted the horrifying truth. She became a key witness for the prosecution, her testimony about his location data proving instrumental in securing the conviction. She was, in the end, another victim of his deception. Her life irrevocably altered by his crimes. Chandler Halderson is currently serving his life sentence at the Dodge Correctional Institute in Wisconsin. His appeal, a no-merit appeal filed by a lawyer who sees no reasonable grounds for one, serves as a final, futile gesture from a man who has never been able to accept the consequences of his own reality. The facade is gone. The architecture of deceit has been demolished, and all that remains is the unadorned, pathetic truth of a man who destroyed his family to protect a lie. The Halderson Case, an analytical autopsy of a life built on lies. Case File 21CFA 00876. Subject: Chandler M. Halderson. Classification: familicide, deception, dismemberment. Status: closed. Subject incarcerated. Introduction: the veneer of normalcy. In the quiet, unassuming suburb of Windsor, Wisconsin, where the lawns are neatly manicured and the rhythms of life follow a predictable, comforting cadence, the Halderson family home on Oak Spring Circle was a portrait of the American dream realized. It was a place of warmth, of quiet accomplishment, a testament to 2 decades of hard work and familial devotion. Bart Halderson, at 50, was the quintessential Midwestern father. A respected accountant with a quick wit, he was known for his arsenal of dad jokes, each one delivered with a twinkle in his eye. He was the family's anchor, steady and reliable. His wife, Krista, 53, was his perfect complement. Her colleagues knew her as unfailingly dependable, a woman whose kindness was a constant, gentle force. Together, they had built a life of comfortable stability, a sanctuary from the world's harsher edges. Within this sanctuary lived their youngest son, 3-year-old Chandler. To the world, and most importantly to the 2 people who loved him most, Chandler was not just a son, but a shining star. He was the embodiment of their hopes, the culmination of their parental efforts. His life, as he presented it, was a whirlwind of extraordinary achievement. He was a brilliant IT student on the verge of graduation from Madison Technical College, his mind sharp and his future bright. But he was more than just a scholar. He was a man of action and civic duty, a volunteer with a prestigious police scuba diving and rescue team, ready to plunge into the icy depths to save a life. He was responsible holding down a job at a local insurance company to help with his expenses. And the crowning jewel of his success, the pinnacle of his fabricated ascent, was a coveted position waiting for him at SpaceX, Elon Musk's visionary aerospace company. He was on a trajectory to the stars, quite literally. His life was not merely a blueprint for success, it was a masterpiece of ambition realized. Bart and Krista, watching their son, could feel their hearts swell with a pride so profound it was almost overwhelming. He was everything they could have ever wished for. This idyllic image, however, was a lie. It was not a house of warmth, but a stage. It was not a portrait of the American dream, but a meticulously crafted illusion, a fragile facade constructed from a foundation of pathological deceit. The layers of lies were so pervasive, so complex, and so deeply embedded in the family's daily life that their architect, Chandler himself, would ultimately choose the unthinkable to protect them. When the first faint tremors of truth threatened to shake his fraudulent world, he would not allow it to simply crack. He would douse the foundations in blood and burn it to the ground. The case of Chandler Halderson is not merely the tragic story of a missing couple. It is a terrifying and profound exploration into the darkest corners of the human psyche. It is a clinical study of narcissistic injury, a deep dive into the cold void of an antisocial personality, and a harrowing chronicle of the catastrophic consequences that unfold when a fantasy world is threatened by the unforgiving light of reality. This analysis will deconstruct, piece by painful piece, the intricate layers of deception. It will examine the powerful psychological drivers that propelled a son to commit the ultimate act of betrayal. And it will trace the painstaking investigative path that peeled back the glossy veneer of suburban normalcy to reveal the horrifying, unutterable truth that festered beneath. This is a cautionary tale, a warning written in blood, of how the crushing pressure to maintain a lie can escalate, with horrifying speed, into the ultimate and most unforgivable of crimes. Part 1. The Architecture of Deceit. To comprehend the brutal, calculated homicides of Bart and Krista Halderson, one must first be willing to step through the looking glass into the alternate reality their son had painstakingly engineered. Chandler's life was not a testament to achievement, but a monument to fraud. This was not the realm of simple, youthful exaggeration or the harmless padding of a resume. This was a systematic, multifaceted, and long-term campaign of disinformation. A psychological warfare waged against the very people who loved and trusted him most. Every facet of his identity was a carefully polished fiction, designed to project an image of brilliance and success, while masking a grim reality of abject failure, inertia, and stagnation. He was the sole author, director, and star of a one-man show, and the price of admission for his parents was their unwavering belief. The price of the show's cancellation would be their lives. The academic fraud. A phantom scholar, The absolute cornerstone of Chandler's vast deception, the central pillar upon which all other lies rested, was his academic career. In the minds of Bart and Krista, their son was a diligent scholar, navigating the final, challenging semesters of his IT degree at Madison College. They envisioned his late nights spent studying, his mind grappling with complex code, his future being forged in the fires of higher education. The reality was a hollow echo of their hopes. Chandler had effectively dropped out of college more than a year prior. His grades had plummeted, his attendance had become non-existent, and he had ceased all meaningful academic activity. He was a ghost in the collegiate system. To maintain the illusion of the dedicated student, he engaged in a charade so complex and audacious it defied belief. A campaign of fabricated communications. Chandler became a master of digital forgery. He created a constellation of fake email accounts, meticulously crafting personas of college administrators, financial aid officers, and academic advisors. Under these assumed identities, he would draft and send a steady stream of correspondence to his father. These emails were masterpieces of manipulation, designed to mimic the mundane bureaucracy of a college. He would provide fabricated updates on his progress, invent complex issues with tuition payments that required his father's attention, and even schedule phantom meetings with faculty members, which he would later cancel with a plausible excuse. The effort was immense. He had to maintain consistent narratives across multiple fake identities, ensuring the tone and language felt authentic. But the pressure of the lie began to show in the details. A forensic analysis of this digital paper trail, conducted after the murders, revealed a pattern of subtle but telling errors, grammatical mistakes, an unusually informal tone, a lack of professional letterhead, small red flags that a concerned and detail-oriented accountant like Bart Halderson, a man whose entire career was built on scrutinizing details, would eventually, and fatally, begin to notice. The art of vocal deception. As Bart's innate skepticism began to clash with his fatherly pride, his requests for clarification evolved. Emails were no longer sufficient. He wanted to speak to someone, to hear a voice that could reassure him. This escalation presented a new, formidable challenge to Chandler's scheme. Undeterred, he adapted. He reportedly downloaded and utilized sophisticated voice-changing applications. When his father insisted on a phone call with a college official, Chandler would retreat to his room, activate the software, and perform. He would become Daniel Spieth or another invented administrator. His voice digitally altered to sound older, more professional, as he calmly discussed his own fabricated academic record with his father on the other end of the line. This act demonstrates a terrifying level of premeditation and a chilling commitment to the fraud. It was not a lie of convenience. It was a full-time job, a constant performance requiring technical skill and nerves of steel. The college student persona was absolutely essential to his existence. It was the master key that unlocked the life he wanted to live. It provided him with a legitimate, unquestioned reason for living at home. A 2-3-year-old man still financially and domestically dependent on his parents. It justified his daily schedule, which, stripped of its academic pretense, consisted of little more than marathon video game sessions, aimless web browsing, and spending time with his girlfriend, Kat. The lie of college was his cloak of invisibility, allowing him to live a life of leisure and dependency while projecting an image of ambition and hard work. The professional facade, a corporation of one. Building upon the bedrock lie of his academic success, Chandler constructed an equally impressive and entirely fictitious professional identity. If he was a top-tier student, it followed that he would be a sought-after employee. He did not disappoint his imaginary audience. The American Family Insurance job, a ghost in the machine. He claimed to be a valued employee at American Family Insurance, a reputable local company. This job became a constant source of drama and a wellspring of excuses. It was his explanation for his lack of tangible income. When his parents, with increasing frustration, would inquire about the modest rent he had agreed to pay, Chandler would launch into elaborate, convoluted narratives of corporate incompetence. There were always payroll issues, human resources errors that sent his check to the wrong address, and inexplicable problems with the direct deposit system. He would perform his frustration, railing against the faceless bureaucracy that was withholding his hard-earned money. Text message exchanges, later recovered by investigators, reveal a tense domestic landscape. Bart and Krista's patience was wearing thin. They were supporting a grown man who claimed to have a job but never had a dollar to show for it. For Chandler, however, this fabricated employment was a crucial tool. It allowed him to deflect from his absolute financial dependence and feign the burdens and responsibilities of an adult. It was another layer of armor, protecting the fragile truth of his indolence. The SpaceX fantasy, a lie of astronomical proportions, the most grandiose and audacious of his lies, the capstone of his fictional life, was the job offer from SpaceX. This was not just a lie, it was a myth he was weaving in real time. He was not just going to be an IT professional, he was going to be part of Elon Musk's mission to the stars. It was a narrative of unparalleled genius and boundless ambition, a story that promised a future of unimaginable prestige and financial independence. This lie was a powerful, multi-purpose tool of manipulation. It filled his parents with a level of pride that likely blinded them to the growing inconsistencies in his other stories. How could a boy accepted by SpaceX be anything but a genius? It also served to solidify his relationship with his girlfriend Kat. She was swept up in the fantasy, making concrete plans to pack up her life and move to Florida with him to start their new, exciting chapter. The impending move to Florida was a stroke of manipulative genius. It created a tangible deadline, a sense of powerful forward momentum that masked the crushing reality that his life was completely stalled. But as the departure date loomed, the pressure to produce results, a signed lease, plane tickets, a relocation package became immense. The fantasy was about to collide with reality. And so, Chandler orchestrated another plot twist. He suffered a serious fall down the stairs in his home, resulting, he claimed, in a severe concussion and debilitating nerve damage. The timing was suspiciously, almost miraculously, convenient. The accident occurred just days before his scheduled departure for Florida. It provided him with the perfect, medically sound excuse to lose the dream job. He could now claim, tragically, that his injuries had forced SpaceX to rescind the offer. This incident, whether an intentionally self-inflicted injury or a genuine accident that he opportunistically and brilliantly exploited, was a critical plot device in his ongoing real-life soap opera. It bought him time and, crucially, it bought him sympathy, deflecting any potential anger from his parents and girlfriend into pity. The police scuba team, a fabricated hero. To add a final glistening layer of heroism and civic duty to his carefully constructed persona, Chandler claimed to be a volunteer member of a local police scuba diving and rescue team. This lie was particularly insidious, as it co-opted the very real bravery of first responders. It was designed to inspire a deep sense of respect and admiration. In this fiction, he was not just a student or a future rocket scientist. He was a hero, a man who would risk his own life for others. It painted him as a brave, selfless, and responsible member of the community, a stark and calculated contrast to the pathetic reality. An unemployed, parasitic young adult living a life devoid of purpose or contribution. Each of these lies was a critical, load-bearing wall in the grand architecture of his false identity. The college lie supported the job lies. The job lies justified his financial situation. The hero lie polished his character. They were all interconnected, a web of deceit so tightly woven that pulling on a single thread threatened to unravel the entire tapestry. It was this profound interconnectedness that transformed the impending discovery of his academic failure from a simple, albeit profound, embarrassment into an existential threat. The exposure of that one foundational lie would not just make him look bad, it would obliterate the very essence of the person he pretended to be and bring the entire world he had built crashing down upon him. He was living in a house of cards, and the slightest breeze of truth was coming. Part 2. The First Cracks, a Disappearance. The meticulously constructed world of Chandler Halderson, a world built of digital smoke and mirrors, began to violently fracture on Thursday, the 1st of July 2021. This was not a day of reckoning he stumbled into. It was a deadline he could no longer postpone. It was the day his father, Bart, a man whose patience had finally been eroded by 1,000 tiny inconsistencies, had scheduled a face-to-face meeting with officials at Madison College. He was going to get answers about his son's academic standing, about the endless tuition problems, about the transcripts he couldn't seem to obtain. It was a meeting, Chandler knew, with the cold, gut-wrenching certainty of a cornered animal would expose everything. The lies had run their course. The pressure had reached its absolute breaking point. The performance was about to end. The Last Supper and the genesis of a lie. According to the initial, chillingly calm narrative Chandler would feed to the police, the evening of July 1st was steeped in a deceptive banality. He portrayed a scene of domestic tranquility. He had cooked dinner for his parents, a simple meal shared together. Over dinner, he claimed, they discussed their imminent weekend getaway to the family cabin in the rustic woods of Langlade County, a 3-hour drive north. He even helped them pack, he said, handling their luggage, another helpful son. This narrative was his first active post-mortem lie. It was a story born of desperate necessity, a verbal smokescreen designed to create a crucial time buffer, a space of days where no one would look for his parents, and to misdirect any potential investigation far away from the blood-soaked truth of his own home. He elaborated on this fiction to authorities, to his brother, and to his parents' worried friends. His parents, he explained, had been picked up by a mysterious couple on the morning of Friday, July 2nd. This couple, whose names he didn't know and whose vehicle he couldn't describe, were friends of theirs who were going to drive them to the cabin. This detail, clumsy and vague under scrutiny, was a necessary invention. It was the only way to explain why Bart and Krista's cars were still parked in the driveway. By introducing this unknown, external party, he was attempting to seed the investigation with doubt, to create phantom suspects onto whom suspicion could theoretically be cast. He was no longer just lying about his life. He was now lying for his life. The performance of a concerned son. In the days that followed, Chandler Halderson delivered the performance of a lifetime. He submerged himself in the role of the worried, frantic son, a young man grappling with the terrifying silence from his missing parents. Every action was calculated, every word chosen to reinforce this image. The co-worker's visit, a test of the narrative. When Krista, a woman known for her punctuality and professionalism, failed to show up for work on Friday, an unprecedented and immediately alarming occurrence, a concerned colleague arrived at the Halderson home. Chandler met him at the door, his face a mask of mild concern. He calmly and convincingly delivered his pre-rehearsed story about the cabin trip and the last-minute change of plans. He suggested that in the rush to leave, his mother had simply forgotten to call in. The story worked. The colleague left, his immediate fears temporarily assuaged. This was the first major test of his new narrative, and he had passed it with flying colors. Digital deception, a ghost in the machine. On Sunday, July 4th, as fireworks lit up the sky across America, Chandler engaged in a modern form of necromancy. He took his mother's phone, which he had kept from the crime scene, and sent a text message to his own phone. The message was cleverly cryptic. "I assume," she said. "White Lake. Today," a reference to the town's famous Independence Day parade near their cabin. This was a calculated and sophisticated move to create a digital proof of life, a breadcrumb for investigators that would suggest his parents were alive and well on Sunday. However, it was a critical, arrogant error. A simple check would reveal that the large, annual White Lake Parade had taken place on Saturday, July 3rd, not the 4th. A person actually attending would have known this. More damningly, cell tower data, the invisible witness, would later confirm that Krista's phone had pinged off a tower in Windsor, at or near the Halderson home, when the text was sent. It was nowhere near Langlade County. He had outsmarted himself. Filing the report, the calculated cry for help. After several days of expertly fielding calls and messages from his parents' increasingly worried friends and colleagues, responding to each with a carefully calibrated blend of hope and concern, Chandler knew he had to take the next step to maintain his credibility. On Wednesday, July 7th, he walked into the Dane County Sheriff's Office and officially filed a missing persons report. It was a necessary move, the final solidifying act in his performance as the devoted son. In his report, he repeated the story of the cabin trip, the mysterious couple, and his growing, gnawing fear. The neighborhood canvas. A bold deception. In perhaps his most audacious and high-risk maneuver, Chandler went door to door in his own neighborhood. He spoke with neighbors, his face etched with worry, asking if they had seen his parents leave, if they had noticed any strange cars, if their home security cameras might have captured anything. This was a breathtakingly bold performance. It was designed to cement his image as a proactive, desperate son in the eyes of his community, the very people who would soon be speaking to the police. But it was a double-edged sword. While it bolstered his cover, it also invited intense scrutiny and drew a brighter spotlight onto the case, potentially accelerating the very investigation that would ultimately unmask him. Throughout this tense, surreal week, his girlfriend, Kat, was a frequent, almost constant presence at the house. She was, in his twisted psychodrama, both his alibi and his unwitting audience. Her presence lent an air of normalcy and domesticity to a home that was, in fact, a desecrated and gruesome crime scene. She played with the dogs in the yard, watched movies with him on the couch, and slept in a house where the scent of bleach and death faintly hung in the air. She was a pawn in his intricate psychological game, her innocent belief in him a powerful shield against the nascent suspicions of the outside world. The first definitive piece of evidence that Chandler's entire story was a lie came not from a detective, but from his own brother. Mitchell Halderson, accompanied by police, drove the 3 hours north to the family cabin. He found it not in a state of weekend relaxation, but in a state of suspended animation. It was silent, still, and coated in a fine layer of dust. The beds were made, the surfaces untouched. It was starkly, chillingly clear that no one had been there for weeks, perhaps months. With that one discovery, the entire foundation of Chandler's misdirection instantly crumbled. The cabin narrative was a lie. There was no mysterious couple. The investigation, which had been looking north, now pivoted 180 degrees. It turned its full, unblinking attention back to Oak Spring Circle and to the last person known to have seen Bart and Krista Halderson alive, their loving, devoted son. Part 3. The Interrogation. A Study in Deceptive Behavior. On the afternoon of the 8th of July 2021, the sterile, neutral-toned walls of an interview room at the Dane County Sheriff's Office became the stage for the final act of Chandler Halderson's elaborate performance. The hours that followed, captured by an unblinking camera lens, provide a masterclass in the behavioral and linguistic tells of a deceptive individual crumbling under the weight of his own lies. His interview, when juxtaposed with the concurrent questioning of his girlfriend, Kat, in a room down the hall, reveals a chasm-like contrast between manipulated innocence and cold, calculated deceit. It was a real-time dissection of a sociopath's mind at work. Chandler Halderson, The Anatomy of a Liar. From the moment he sat down, Chandler's demeanor was a study in contradictions, utterly inconsistent with that of a grieving son desperate for answers about his beloved parents. An analytical review of the interrogation footage reveals a textbook display of deceptive indicators and the profound psychological distress that comes not from loss, but from the terror of being caught. Emotional cutoff and immense cognitive load. Chandler spoke in a slow, deliberate, and almost robotic monotone. His answers were laconic, his energy profoundly subdued. He often stared blankly at the floor, his eyes unfocused, appearing dissociated or in a daze. While seasoned, investigators noted that this could be a symptom of extreme trauma, a psychological defense mechanism known as emotional cutoff in this specific context. It was far more likely indicative of an immense cognitive load. He was not casually accessing memories of a routine weekend. He was engaged in the Herculean mental task of constructing, maintaining, and cross-referencing a complex and fragile lie. He had to remember what he told the coworker, what he told his brother, what he told the 911 operator, and ensure his current answers aligned perfectly. This requires a staggering amount of mental energy, resulting in a subdued, almost anesthetized presentation. He was a computer processing a million conflicting data points, and the strain was visible. The language of the eyes, gaze aversion. His avoidance of eye contact was pervasive and profound. While occasional breaks in eye contact are a normal part of memory recall as the brain accesses different regions, Chandler's near-constant gaze aversion was a powerful nonverbal admission of guilt. It suggested a deep subconscious unwillingness to face his questioners and the truth they represented. The few fleeting moments he did make direct, sustained eye contact were electric with tension. They occurred during the most critical challenges to his story, such as his sharp, sudden inquiry about whether the police had a search warrant for his house. This abrupt shift from passive avoidance to intense, penetrating focus is not a sign of honesty. It is the action of a predator, an attempt to read the investigators' faces, to gauge their reactions, and to determine with cold precision exactly how much they knew and what cards they were holding. Self-soothing and barrier creation. Throughout the long interview, Chandler's body was a landscape of anxiety. He engaged in a constant stream of repetitive self-soothing gestures. He covered his face with his hands as if to hide, rubbed his chin raw, and reflexively created physical barriers with his arms, crossing them over his chest. These are common, almost universal pacifying behaviors used by the human nervous system to manage extreme anxiety. For an innocent person in his position, this anxiety would be a natural byproduct of the terrifying fear and uncertainty of their parents' fate. But for Chandler, the anxiety stemmed from a different, more selfish source. The primal, heart-pounding fear of being caught and the impending destruction of his life. The bloody toe narrative. Preemptive contamination. When the detectives began to circle the topic of the crime scene, subtly hinting at the likelihood that forensic evidence would be found in the home, Chandler deftly launched a preemptive strike. He offered a detailed, dramatic, and wildly exaggerated story about severely cutting his toe on a broken fireplace glass panel. He didn't just describe a cut. He painted a gruesome picture of squirting blood, of puddles so large they dripped down into the basement. This narrative was far more dramatic than any simple household injury would warrant. This is a classic, albeit desperate, tactic of a deceptive person. Introducing a small kernel of truth, he may have genuinely cut his toe at some point, and inflating it into a massive, theatrical event to account for the incriminating evidence he knows exists. He was attempting to proactively contaminate the crime scene, to provide a plausible, innocent explanation for the presence of his own blood and, more importantly, for the extensive and obvious cleaning he had undertaken with bleach and hydrogen peroxide. The Freudian slip, a glimpse into the subconscious. At one point, while describing his trip to the police station to report his parents missing, he stated that he went to the station to make a flight period, before quickly, almost imperceptibly, correcting himself to missing persons report. This Freudian slip, a momentary crack in his conscious control, was profoundly telling. In that moment of high stress, his subconscious mind betrayed his true intentions. He was not thinking about finding his parents. His mind was on escape, on flight from the consequences of his horrific actions. Invoking counsel. The final gambit. The interrogation reached its climax when the detectives made a calculated tactical shift. They dropped their gentle, inquisitive facade, leaned in, and confronted him directly. They told him they knew he was lying. They told him, with chilling certainty, that they knew his parents were deceased. In that instant, his composure, already strained to its limits, shattered completely. The robotic calm evaporated, replaced by a flicker of raw panic. He did not protest his innocence. He did not break down in tears. He did the one thing a guilty person does when their lies have utterly failed, and they are faced with the irrefutable specter of the truth. He immediately invoked his right to an attorney. It was the final move in a lost chess game. His chilling parting shots to the escorting officer as he was being led away in handcuffs. You don't know the whole story, and I don't feel bad about what I did, were the last horrifying moments where the mask slipped entirely, revealing a fleeting, terrifying flash of the remorseless, hollow individual who lurked beneath the surface. Kat, the unwitting accomplice in a tragedy. Kat's interview, taking place simultaneously down the hall, provides a poignant and heartbreaking counterpoint. Her behavior, which could be perceived at times as immature or bizarrely detached, was ultimately not the behavior of a liar, but of a deeply naive young woman, failing to comprehend the abyss that had opened up beneath her feet. Naivety and emotional immaturity, a world of difference. Her initial demeanor in the interview room was jarringly casual. Her fascination with a stuffed animal, which she cuddled for comfort, and her odd, protracted consumption of a cookie, to which she claimed to have a violent allergy, can be interpreted as signs of profound emotional immaturity. She had not yet grasped the gravity of the situation. She was operating under the deeply flawed assumption that this was a standard, procedural interview about a missing persons case involving her boyfriend's parents. She had no framework to comprehend that she was, in fact, a central witness in a double homicide investigation, and that the man she loved was the prime and only suspect. Corroboration and defense. The power of manipulation. In the early stages of the interview, she acted as an unwitting agent of his deception. She corroborated his timeline of the weekend, her memory shaped and framed by the narrative he had fed her. She defended his character, portraying his cold, flat affect not as a sign of psychopathy, but as the quirky, emotional expression of a non-traditional person who was struggling in his own way. She was still completely under his manipulative influence, viewing the unfolding events through the distorted lens he had so carefully crafted for her. The slow, agonizing dawn of horror. As the detectives' questioning grew more pointed and intense, as they began to gently but firmly imply Chandler's direct involvement, her demeanor underwent a dramatic and painful transformation. The casual air vanished, replaced by a visible and palpable stress. Her brow furrowed, her body tensed, and she began to exhibit genuine, unfeigned shock and distress. Her repeated, almost breathless denials of "no, no, no," when asked if Chandler could be involved, was not the practiced, firm denial of a co-conspirator. It was the raw, visceral sound of her own internal world shattering, the desperate cry of a mind struggling to reconcile the gentle, funny boyfriend she thought she knew with the inhuman monster the police were methodically describing. Cooperation, born of innocence. Unlike Chandler, whose every utterance was a calculated move, Kat was largely and genuinely cooperative. She freely offered photos from her phone, complete with timestamps, to help the investigation. She eventually, albeit reluctantly, consented to a full download of her phone's data and provided a DNA swab. Her eventual frustration, which boiled over when detectives informed her they would be impounding her car, did not stem from guilt. It stemmed from a bewildered and righteous sense of injustice, the feeling of being punished for her own cooperation. It was the moment the full reality of her new situation, no longer a girlfriend, but a key witness in the gruesome murder of her boyfriend's parents, finally began to set in with crushing weight. The interrogation room, a small, unremarkable space, became the crucible where the grand fantasy of Chandler Halderson was finally burned away. Under the intense, unyielding pressure of skilled and patient questioning, his carefully constructed narrative, the very architecture of his identity, disintegrated into dust, leaving only the cold, hard, and undeniable reality of his guilt. Part 4. The Unraveling. A trail of digital and physical evidence. While Chandler Halderson desperately attempted to control the narrative inside the sterile confines of the interrogation room, a multifaceted and rapidly accelerating investigation was systematically dismantling his kingdom of lies in the outside world. Like a team of forensic archaeologists, detectives and crime scene investigators began to unearth a trove of evidence, each piece a damning artifact of his crime. A powerful combination of cutting-edge digital forensics, grim physical discoveries, and crucial witness testimony converged to create an irrefutable and horrifying timeline of murder, dismemberment, disposal, and deceit. The digital footprints, a ghost in the machine. In the 21st century, it is nearly impossible to commit a crime of this magnitude without leaving a trail of digital breadcrumbs. Chandler, a young man fluent in the language of technology, ironically became a victim of his own digital existence. His devices, and those of the people around him, became a virtual, unimpeachable witness to his every move. Snapchat location data. The accidental confession. The single most critical piece of digital evidence, the key that would unlock one of the darkest secrets of the case, came not from a sophisticated police tool, but from the everyday social media habits of his girlfriend, Kat. While cooperating with investigators and reviewing her phone for any relevant information, she was struck by a sudden, chilling memory. She recalled taking a screenshot of Chandler's Snapchat location on the morning of Saturday, July 3rd. She had been trying to reach him, and his unresponsiveness had prompted her to check his location on the app's map feature. The screenshot, which she had unthinkingly saved, was a digital bombshell. It showed his Bitmoji avatar, a cartoon representation of himself, stationary in a remote, desolate area along the Wisconsin River. When he had finally answered her call that morning, he had claimed to be driving through a dead zone while running errands. But the app's data told a different story. It showed he was immobile for a significant period. This single screenshot was the key that unlocked the ghastly secret of where he had hidden Krista Halderson's remains. It was an accidental confession, transmitted through the ether. Google's search history, a window into a guilty mind. In the days following the murders, as he performed his role as the concerned son, Chandler's Google search history told a very different and far more sinister story. It was a direct, unfiltered window into his guilty and anxious conscience. He obsessively searched for terms like Wisconsin dismembered body found in Wisconsin, dead body found in Milwaukee River 2021, and, most tellingly, the names of his parents, Bart and Krista Halderson. These were not the searches of a worried son hoping for news. They were the frantic, paranoid queries of a killer, compulsively checking the news feeds for any sign that his horrific clandestine work had been discovered by the authorities. Cell phone geolocation, the betrayal of the pings. A forensic analysis of Bart and Krista's cell phones delivered another damning blow to his fabricated timeline. As previously mentioned, Krista's phone, which Chandler was using to create a false trail, was shown to be at or very near the Halderson residence on July 4th when it sent the proof-of-life text about the White Lake Parade. This directly contradicted his claim that his parents were hours away at their cabin. The physical phone itself became a crucial piece of evidence. Investigators, during a meticulous search of the property, found it hidden deep within the garage. It had been crudely wrapped in tinfoil, a futile, misinformed attempt based on spy movie tropes to block its GPS and cellular signal, and stuffed unceremoniously inside an old shoe. The discovery of the phone, and the data it contained, proved that Chandler was not just a liar, but a manipulator actively using his dead mother's digital identity to mislead the police. The physical evidence, the unspeakable truth. The physical evidence unearthed by the crime scene unit painted a gruesome and undeniable picture of the horrific events that had transpired inside the once peaceful home on Oak Spring Circle. The fireplace, an unholy crematorium. In the heart of the family's living room, in the place where they had likely gathered for countless holidays, investigators made their most horrifying discovery. Sifting through the cold ashes of the family fireplace, they found not just charred wood, but over 200 human bone fragments. These tiny, calcified pieces of his parents, later positively identified through mitochondrial DNA analysis as belonging to Bart and Krista, were the silent, irrefutable proof that Chandler had made a monstrous attempt to destroy their remains by burning them. This grim discovery aligned perfectly with the testimony of a neighbor who had reported smelling a strange and deeply unsettling odor, something akin to barbecued meat, on the night of July 1st. It also corroborated the footage from another neighbor's security camera, which had captured a strange, persistent flickering light emanating from the Haldersons' chimney for several hours in the dead of night. From approximately midnight until 4:30 a.m. on July 2nd, the family hearth had been turned into an unholy crematorium. Blood evidence, the story told in luminol. Using luminol, a chemical agent that reacts with the iron in hemoglobin to produce an eerie blue glow, investigators sprayed the basement and living room floors. The result was a chilling revelation. The rooms lit up with the ghostly signature of massive bloodstains, particularly concentrated on the concrete floor of the basement and on the stone hearth in front of the fireplace. Despite Chandler's frantic and meticulous attempts to scrub and clean the scene with hydrogen peroxide and other chemicals, the sheer volume of blood that had been shed was too immense to be entirely erased. It had soaked into the porous surfaces, leaving an indelible stain. This evidence eviscerated his cut-toe story. The patterns and volume of the blood pointed not to a minor household accident, but to a violent, bloody struggle and the subsequent, horrific act of dismemberment. The disposal sites, a geography of evil. The farm. Acting on the crucial information provided by Kat's mother, Dolce, and her partner, Cress, police descended on their sprawling farm property. The two women recalled Chandler's strange, solitary visit on Monday, July 5th. They had witnessed his car parked suspiciously near a wooded area with the trunk open, and later saw him emerge from the tree line and seem to furtively wash himself off in their swimming pool. Following this lead, investigators began a search of those same woods. It wasn't long before they made a gut-churning discovery: the dismembered torso of a human male, later identified as Bart Halderson. Nearby, in a rusted, empty oil drum, they found a killer's toolkit, a collection of cutting tools, including saws and powerful bolt cutters, which would later match the gruesome tool marks left on the remains. The Wisconsin River. Guided by the digital map provided by Kat's Snapchat screenshot, investigators searched the remote, isolated area by the Wisconsin River. There, in a place he likely thought no one would ever find, they discovered the remains of his mother, Krista Halderson. The surveillance trail. The killer's errands. Chandler's mundane errands in the days following the murders were meticulously tracked by the ever-present, unblinking eyes of surveillance cameras from local stores, creating a damning visual diary of his preparations. Ice purchases. An attempt at preservation. He was captured on camera at a Target and a Quick Trip gas station on July 1st and July 3rd, purchasing multiple large bags of ice. Investigators theorize that the ice was used for a gruesome and practical purpose: to preserve his parents' remains, to slow their decomposition inside the home before he had the opportunity to dispose of them. A necessary precaution, especially given that his unsuspecting girlfriend was a frequent visitor to the house. Tarp purchase. The tools of disposal. Footage from a local Fleet Farm store showed him calmly purchasing a large, heavy-duty tarp. This item, investigators noted, is a common and morbidly practical tool used by killers in the transportation and disposal of human remains, intended to prevent the spread of blood and other forensic evidence in a vehicle. This same tarp was later found, rolled up, and discarded on the farm property where his father's torso was discovered. The convergence of this evidence was total and catastrophic for his lies. It formed an unbreakable chain of guilt. The digital data placed him, with pinpoint accuracy, at both disposal sites. The physical evidence confirmed, in the most gruesome detail imaginable, the murders, the dismemberment, and the attempted destruction of the bodies. The surveillance footage documented his cold, calculated preparations for the disposal. Every lie he had ever told, every performance he had ever given, was systematically and utterly dismantled by a mountain of indisputable, horrifying fact. Part 5. The Mind of a Killer, a Psychological Profile. The horrific crimes of Chandler Halderson were not the product of a sudden, explosive, and uncontrollable rage. They were not a crime of passion. They were the chillingly logical culmination of a personality structure so profoundly broken, so fundamentally incapable of coping with the universal human experiences of failure and shame, that murder became a viable, even necessary, solution. While a formal clinical diagnosis can only be made by a qualified professional after extensive in-person evaluation, his behavior, as meticulously documented throughout the investigation, is highly and disturbingly consistent with a severe comorbid personality disorder, most notably displaying the malignant traits of both narcissistic personality disorder, NPD, and antisocial personality disorder, ASPD, often referred to in layman's terms as psychopathy, pathological narcissism, the tyranny of the false self. Narcissism exists on a wide spectrum, from healthy self-esteem to toxic arrogance. Chandler's actions, however, place him firmly at the pathological, malignant end of that spectrum. His entire existence was governed by an all-consuming, desperate need to construct and maintain a grandiose, false self-image. The grandiose fantasy. A life as fiction. Chandler's life was a continuous, exhausting performance designed to elicit admiration and envy. The SpaceX job, the police scuba team, the IT degree, these were not just lies. They were the essential components of a meticulously crafted fantasy self. In this internal fiction, he was a person of immense importance, of towering intelligence, and of heroic virtue. This fantasy was not for fun. It was a necessary psychological mechanism to regulate his pathologically fragile self-esteem. The idea of being seen as ordinary, average, or, worst of all, a failure, was not just unpleasant to him. It was an intolerable, annihilating state of being. A parasitic lifestyle and a bottomless sense of entitlement. Stripped of his fantasies, Chandler lived a purely parasitic existence. He was a 2-3-year-old man, completely dependent, financially and domestically, on the very parents he secretly held in contempt for their inability to see his true greatness. He felt absolutely entitled to their financial support, their home, and their services, without feeling any sense of reciprocal obligation or gratitude. His palpable frustration and anger, evident in text messages, when they demanded he pay a modest rent or prove he had a legitimate job, was not the reaction of a struggling young adult trying to find his footing. It was the indignant rage of a true narcissist who believes, with every fiber of his being, that the world, and especially his family, owes him a comfortable and effortless living. Inability to tolerate narcissistic injury, the shattering of the mirror. A narcissistic injury is any perceived threat, however small, to a narcissist's grandiose self-concept. It is a slight, a criticism, or a failure that threatens to expose the mediocrity or fraudulence that lies beneath the polished exterior. For Chandler, the imminent meeting at Madison College on July first represented a catastrophic, extinction-level narcissistic injury. The exposure of his academic failure would not just be embarrassing, it would be a psychological apocalypse. It would shatter the entire fantasy self he had so carefully presented to the world. In an instant, it would reveal him as a fraud and a failure to his parents, his adoring girlfriend, and his entire social circle. The mirror in which he viewed his perfect self was about to be shattered. The homicidal solution: eliminating the messenger. In the deeply distorted and self-protective mind of a pathological narcissist, the source of the injury, the messenger of the bad news, must be silenced. It must be eliminated. Bart Halderson, in his simple fatherly quest for the truth, became the primary and most immediate threat to Chandler's psychological survival. By scheduling the meeting, Bart was not just checking up on his son, he was threatening to detonate the bomb at the center of Chandler's world. Therefore, in Chandler's cold, twisted logic, Bart had to be destroyed first. Krista's murder likely followed as a matter of brutal practicality. She was a witness, a loose end, and an inextricable part of the world and the family unit that was about to be exposed as a sham. He chose double homicide over the shame of exposure. The act of killing his own parents was, in the most perverse way imaginable, an act of self-preservation, not of his physical self, but of the hollow, fragile, and entirely fake fantasy self he valued more than life itself. Antisocial, psychopathic traits. The absence of a soul. While his motives were born of a desperate narcissistic need, his methods were chillingly, purely antisocial. He operated with a cold, detached precision that speaks to a profound lack of the very things that make us human: pathological lying and masterful manipulation. For Chandler, lying was not a last resort. It was his default mode of communication. It was as natural to him as breathing. He expertly manipulated everyone in his orbit: his parents with a web of fake emails and phone calls, his girlfriend with a shared fantasy future, and the police with a calm, practiced, and fabricated narrative of concern. The investigation revealed that he had a long and storied history of this behavior, with former partners and friends describing him as a serial cheater, a thief, and a compulsive, almost artistic liar, void of empathy and remorse. His behavior in the hours, days, and weeks following the murders was a chilling portrait of a man utterly devoid of genuine grief or remorse. While his parents' dismembered bodies were being stored, burned, and scattered across the Wisconsin landscape, he played video games, hung out with his girlfriend, set off 4th of July fireworks, and calmly lied to the faces of concerned detectives. His post-arrest statement that he didn't feel bad about what he did was a stark and terrifying admission of his profound lack of empathy. He viewed his parents not as loving human beings to be cherished and respected, but as objects to be used and discarded. First, they were sources of financial support and validation, narcissistic supply. Then, when they ceased to be useful and became a threat, they were merely obstacles to be removed from his path, like pieces of trash. Cold, calculated, and methodical planning. The dismemberment of the bodies, the strategic use of ice for preservation, the premeditated purchase of a tarp, the careful selection of 2 separate and remote disposal sites, and the ghastly attempt to destroy evidence in the family fireplace all point to a level of cold, calculated, and methodical planning. This was not a crime of passion. It was a project. He methodically and unemotionally went about the gruesome task of covering his tracks with the detached efficiency of a butcher. The revelations from former friends that Chandler had once casually claimed to have been diagnosed as a psychopath and that he thought he might be a sociopath are perhaps the most chilling detail of all. They suggest a terrifying degree of self-awareness of his own malevolent and broken nature. He knew what he was, and he embraced it. Chandler Halderson's psychology is ultimately that of a hollow man. Lacking a genuine, stable, and authentic core identity, he constructed a glittering, false one, out of lies and ambition. When that false identity was threatened with exposure, he revealed the terrifying void that lay beneath a psychological black hole devoid of empathy, morality, love, or the capacity for genuine human connection. The violence was not an aberration from his character. It was the logical, inevitable, and horrific final act for a person whose entire existence was predicated on a lie too big to maintain and too fragile to survive the truth. Part 6. The Aftermath and the Certainty of Justice. The arrest and subsequent trial of Chandler Halderson ripped the final tattered shreds from his carefully woven costume of normalcy, exposing the monstrous reality beneath to the stark, unforgiving light of the public record. His behavior, both during the complex legal proceedings and while incarcerated awaiting his fate, offered a final, unambiguous, and deeply disturbing look into the unrepentant core of his character. The trial and the inevitable conviction. Chandler's trial commenced in January 2022. In a move of staggering and self-defeating arrogance, he entered a plea of not guilty. However, he refused to cooperate in any meaningful way with his own publicly appointed defense team and, crucially, declined to take the stand to testify in his own defense. He remained a silent, hollow enigma at the center of his own trial. The prosecution, in contrast, presented a meticulous, methodical, and utterly overwhelming case. They systematically laid out the crushing weight of the digital, physical, and testimonial evidence they had amassed. For the jury, the task was not the complex and nuanced one of determining if he had committed these horrific crimes, but simply the procedural one of formally affirming the undeniable mountain of evidence that stood before them. After deliberating for a mere 2 hours, a remarkably short time for a double homicide case, and a testament to the sheer strength of the prosecution's evidence, the jury returned a swift and decisive verdict of guilty on all counts. 2 counts of first-degree intentional homicide, 2 counts of mutilating a corpse, 2 counts of hiding a corpse, 2 counts of giving false information regarding a missing person. On the 17th of March 2022, Chandler Halderson appeared for his sentencing hearing. His request to be absent from this final public accounting was summarily denied by the judge. He was forced to listen as the impact of his actions was laid bare. In his only statement to the court, he displayed not a flicker of remorse, not a whisper of regret for the lives he had stolen. Instead, with a chilling self-absorption that defined his very being, he focused entirely on his own future. He announced his intent to appeal the verdict and, in a bizarre and unprecedented move, publicly solicited appellate lawyers watching the televised proceedings to take on his case. It was a final, fittingly narcissistic display, a defiant, self-pitying, and utterly remorseless exit from the world of free men. He was sentenced to life in prison without the slightest possibility of parole. The post-arrest relationship. A masterclass in denial and manipulation. One of the most perplexing and psychologically fascinating aspects of the case was the bizarre and disturbing continuation of the relationship between Chandler and his girlfriend, Kat, in the weeks and months following his arrest. A review of their jailhouse messages and recorded phone calls reveals a deeply unsettling dynamic of masterful manipulation meeting profound, desperate denial. Continued manipulation from a cage. Even from behind bars, Chandler's manipulative charade continued unabated. He skillfully maintained the fiction of their shared future, referring to Kat in his messages as his wifey and himself as her hubby. He never once admitted guilt, instead blaming the relentless media for putting a bad spin on the case and slyly assuring her that the real story was much different than what was being reported. Even in jail, he continued to be a financial and emotional parasite, thanking her for taking on the burden of paying his legal fees and blithely promising to compensate her handsomely as soon as he got out. He kept her tethered to the fantasy, even as the walls of a prison cell surrounded him. Initial denial, clinging to the lie. For a significant period, Kat appeared to be trapped in a state of profound and understandable denial. The psychological shock of discovering the man she loved was an accused monster was too much to process. She continued to offer him her unwavering support, advised him on his physical appearance for court appearances, show people you don't look like a monster, and repeatedly expressed her love for him. It stands as a chilling testament to the insidious power of his long-term manipulation that even after his arrest for the brutal, barbaric murder of his own parents, she clung desperately to the image of the man she thought she knew, the man he had invented for her. The eventual, painful break. The truth, however, is a persistent and powerful force. By the time of the trial, the sheer, crushing weight of the evidence had become impossible for her to ignore. The communication ceased. The spell was broken. Kat had finally and painfully accepted the horrifying truth. She transitioned from his staunchest defender to a key and powerful witness for the prosecution. Her testimony, particularly regarding the Snapchat location data, was instrumental in sealing his fate. She was, in the end, the final victim of his deception. Her life and her ability to trust irrevocably altered by his crimes. Chandler Halderson is currently serving his life sentence at the Dodge Correctional Institute in Waupun, Wisconsin, where he will remain until his death. His appeal, a legally designated no-merit appeal filed by a lawyer who can find no reasonable or legitimate grounds for one, serves as a final, futile gesture from a man who has never been able to accept the consequences of his own reality. The glamorous facade is gone. The intricate architecture of deceit has been demolished and swept away, and all that remains is the unadorned, pathetic, and horrifying truth of a man who destroyed his entire family and his own life to protect a world that never even existed. The Halderson case, a forensic psychology autopsy of a life built on lies. Case file 2-1-C-F-A-0-0-8-7-6. Subject: Chandler M. Halderson. Classification: familicide, deception, dismemberment, malignant, narcissism. Status: closed. Subject incarcerated. Introduction: The Mask of Sanity on Oak Spring Circle. In the quiet, unassuming suburb of Windsor, Wisconsin, a place where the clipped green uniformity of the lawns mirrors the predictable, comforting cadence of life, the Halderson family home on Oak Spring Circle stood as a monument to the American dream. From the outside, it was a portrait of realized ambition and wholesome domesticity. It was a place of perceived warmth, a physical testament to 2 decades of diligent hard work and unwavering familial devotion. Bart Halderson, at 50, was the quintessential Midwestern patriarch. A respected accountant by trade, his life was one of order and ledgers, a reality he softened with a quick wit and a well-known arsenal of dad jokes, each one delivered with a familiar twinkle in his eye. He was the family's anchor, a man of steady habits and reliable principles. His wife, Krista, 53, was his perfect complement, a woman whose boundless kindness was described by colleagues as a constant, gentle force in a world that often lacked it. She was unfailingly dependable, the quiet heart of their shared life. Together, Bart and Krista had meticulously built a world of comfortable stability, a sanctuary meant to shield their children from the world's harsher edges. Within this carefully constructed sanctuary lived their youngest son, 3-year-old Chandler. To the outside world, and most critically to the 2 people who had invested their entire beings in his future, Chandler was not just a son, he was a supernova. He was the living, breathing embodiment of their every hope, the triumphant culmination of their parental efforts. His life, as he narrated it, was a breathtaking whirlwind of extraordinary, almost superhuman achievement. He was, they believed, a brilliant IT student hurtling toward graduation from Madison Technical College, his mind a razor-sharp instrument poised to conquer the digital frontier. But his talents, he assured them, were not confined to the academic realm. He was a man of action, of selfless civic duty, a volunteer with a prestigious and highly selective police scuba diving and rescue team, ever ready to plunge into the icy, black depths to save a life. He was responsible and grounded, holding down a demanding job at a local insurance company to help with his expenses, a sign of his burgeoning maturity. And then there was the crowning jewel of his success, the pinnacle of his meticulously fabricated ascent, a coveted, almost mythical position waiting for him at SpaceX, Elon Musk's visionary aerospace company. He wasn't just getting a job, he was joining a mission. He was on a trajectory to the stars, quite literally. His life was not merely a blueprint for success. It was a masterpiece of ambition realized, a story so compelling it bordered on fiction. And as Bart and Krista watched their remarkable son, they could feel their hearts swell with a pride so profound, so all-encompassing, it was almost overwhelming. He was, in every conceivable way, everything they could have ever wished for. This idyllic image, however, was a lie. It was a monstrous, elaborate, and pathologically constructed deception. The house on Oak Spring Circle was not a home of warmth, but a stage for a long-running play. It was not a portrait of the American dream, but a meticulously crafted illusion, a fragile and glittering facade constructed from a foundation of such profound pathological deceit that its collapse was inevitable. The layers of lies were so pervasive, so complex, and so deeply embedded into the very fabric of the family's daily life that their architect, Chandler himself, would ultimately choose the unthinkable to protect them. When the first faint, tectonic tremors of truth threatened to shake his fraudulent world, he would not allow it to simply crack or crumble. He would douse the foundations in his parents' blood and burn the entire structure to the ground. The case of Chandler Halderson is not merely the tragic story of a missing couple. For the student of forensic psychology, it is a terrifying and profound exploration into the darkest, most frigid corners of the human psyche. It is a clinical study of malignant narcissism, of catastrophic narcissistic injury, and a deep dive into the cold, barren void of the antisocial personality. It is a harrowing, real-time chronicle of the catastrophic consequences that unfold when a meticulously constructed fantasy world is threatened by the unforgiving, ordinary light of reality. This analysis will deconstruct, piece by painful clinical piece, the intricate layers of deception not as simple falsehoods, but as vital psychological defenses. It will examine the powerful, distorted psychological drivers that propelled a son to commit the ultimate primal act of betrayal. And it will trace the painstaking investigative path that peeled back the glossy, comforting veneer of suburban normalcy to reveal the horrifying, unutterable, and psychologically vacant truth that festered beneath. This is a cautionary tale, a warning written in blood, of how the crushing pressure to maintain a lie, when filtered through the lens of a severe personality disorder, can escalate with horrifying, logic-defying speed into the ultimate and most unforgivable of crimes. Part 1. The Architecture of Deceit, a Psychopathological Construct. To truly comprehend the brutal, calculated, and chillingly dispassionate homicides of Bart and Krista Halderson, one must first be willing to step through the looking glass. One must leave behind the world of normal human emotion and motivation and enter the alternate reality their son had painstakingly engineered. Chandler's life was not a testament to achievement. It was a monument to fraud. This was not the realm of simple, youthful exaggeration or the harmless padding of a resume that many engage in. This was a systematic, multifaceted, and long-term campaign of disinformation, a form of psychological warfare waged with chilling precision against the very people who loved and trusted him most. Every facet of his presented identity was a carefully polished fiction, a gleaming component in a larger machine designed to project an image of brilliance, heroism, and success, all while masking a grim and pathetic reality of abject failure, profound inertia, and a deep-seated parasitic stagnation. He was the sole author, director, and star of a one-man show, a drama so convincing that his parents paid the price of admission with their unwavering belief. The price of the show's cancellation, he would ultimately decide, would be their lives. His identity was not a reflection of who he was, but a psychopathological construct designed to survive the academic fraud, a phantom scholar, and the foundational lie, the absolute cornerstone of Chandler's vast and intricate deception, the central, load-bearing pillar upon which all other subsequent lies were precariously balanced, was his academic career. In the minds of Bart and Krista, their son was a diligent and gifted scholar, skillfully navigating the final, challenging semesters of his information technology degree at Madison College. In their quiet moments, they likely envisioned his late nights, fueled by coffee, spent hunched over a keyboard, his mind grappling with complex algorithms and lines of code, his bright future being forged in the intellectual fires of higher education. They were investing in a fiction, and the returns, they believed, would be immense. The reality was a hollow, mocking echo of their proud hopes. Chandler had effectively and completely dropped out of college more than a year prior. His academic performance had not just slipped, it had plummeted into a free fall of failing grades and non-attendance. He had ceased all meaningful academic activity, becoming a ghost in the collegiate system, his name a forgotten entry on old class rosters. To maintain the increasingly elaborate illusion of the dedicated student, He engaged in a charade so complex, so audacious, and so psychologically taxing that it defies belief. A campaign of fabricated communications. The digital puppeteer. Chandler became a master of digital forgery, a puppeteer pulling the strings of a virtual university administration of his own creation. He created a constellation of fake email accounts, meticulously crafting the personas of various college officials, administrators, financial aid officers, and academic advisors. He gave them names, titles, and a bureaucratic voice. Under these assumed identities, he would draft and send a steady, calculated stream of correspondence to his father, Bart. These emails were masterpieces of psychological manipulation, designed to mimic the mundane, often frustrating bureaucracy of a large educational institution. He would provide fabricated updates on his progress, invent complex and convoluted issues with tuition payments that required his father's immediate attention and financial intervention, and even go so far as to schedule phantom meetings with faculty members, which he would invariably cancel at the last minute with a plausible, professionally worded excuse. The sheer psychological effort required for this undertaking was immense. He had to maintain consistent narratives across multiple fake identities, ensuring the tone, language, and specific details of each fabrication remained authentic and internally consistent. It was a constant, high-wire active deception. But the immense pressure of maintaining this lie, day in and day out, began to manifest in subtle, almost imperceptible errors. A forensic analysis of this digital paper trail, conducted by investigators after the murders, revealed a pattern of telling mistakes, recurring grammatical errors, an unusually informal and conversational tone inconsistent with official university communications, a conspicuous lack of professional letterhead or email signatures. These were the small, digital red flags, the tiny cracks in the edifice of his lie, that a concerned and detail-oriented accountant like Bart Halderson, a man whose entire career was built on the dispassionate scrutiny of details, would eventually and fatally begin to notice. The art of vocal deception, a performance of identity. As Bart's innate professional skepticism began to wage a war with his deep-seated fatherly pride, his requests for clarification escalated. Emails with their inherent anonymity were no longer sufficient to quell his growing unease. He wanted to speak to someone, to hear a human voice that could provide the reassurance he so desperately craved. This escalation presented a new, formidable, and potentially insurmountable challenge to Chandler's scheme. Undeterred, he adapted with a chilling display of technological resourcefulness. He reportedly downloaded and learned to utilize sophisticated voice-changing applications on his computer. When his father, with increasing insistence, demanded a phone call with a college official named Daniel Spieth, Chandler would retreat to the privacy of his room, activate the software, and perform. He would become Daniel Spieth. His young voice digitally altered to sound older, more authoritative, more professional, as he calmly and coolly discussed his own fabricated academic record with his own father on the other end of the line. This act demonstrates a terrifying level of premeditation and a chilling, almost psychopathic commitment to the fraud. This was not a lie of convenience or a moment of panicked improvisation. It was a full-time job, a constant, draining performance requiring technical skill, immense gall, and nerves of absolute steel. The college student persona was the master key to his entire existence. It was the legitimate, unquestioned reason for a 2-3-year-old man to still be living at home, fully dependent, financially and domestically, on his parents. It was the perfect alibi for his daily schedule, which, stripped of its academic pretense, consisted of little more than marathon video game sessions, aimless web browsing, and spending time with his girlfriend, Kat. The lie of college was his cloak of invisibility, a powerful shield that allowed him to live a life of profound leisure and dependency while simultaneously projecting a convincing image of ambition, diligence, and hard work. It was the perfect con, the professional facade, a corporation of one. Building upon the bedrock lie of his academic success, Chandler constructed an equally impressive and entirely fictitious professional identity. The logic of his narrative was impeccable. If he was a top-tier student on the verge of graduation, it naturally followed that he would be a sought-after employee in a competitive job market. He did not disappoint his imaginary audience of admirers. The American family insurance job, a ghost in the corporate machine. He claimed to be a valued and contributing employee at American Family Insurance, a reputable and well-known local company. This job became a constant source of manufactured drama and a bottomless wellspring of excuses. It was his primary explanation for his chronic and conspicuous lack of tangible income. When his parents, with what text messages revealed to be increasing frustration and impatience, would inquire about the modest rent he had long ago agreed to pay, Chandler would launch into elaborate, convoluted, and passionately delivered narratives of corporate incompetence. There were always, it seemed, inexplicable payroll issues. Human resources had made a catastrophic error and sent his paycheck to the wrong address. The direct deposit system had malfunctioned yet again. He would perform his frustration with theatrical flair, railing against the faceless, inefficient bureaucracy that was, he claimed, withholding his hard-earned money. Text message exchanges between Chandler, his parents, and his girlfriend, later recovered by investigators, paint a vivid picture of a tense and deteriorating domestic landscape. Bart and Krista's patience was wearing thin. They were, in essence, fully supporting a grown man who claimed to have a professional job but never had a single dollar to show for it. For Chandler, however, this fabricated employment was a crucial psychological tool. It allowed him to deflect from his absolute financial dependence and to feign the burdens, responsibilities, and lexicon of an adult professional. It was another thick layer of psychic armor, protecting the fragile, pathetic truth of his indolence from the world, and perhaps even from himself. The SpaceX fantasy, a lie of astronomical proportions. The most grandiose, the most audacious, and ultimately the most dangerous of his lies, was the job offer from SpaceX. This was not just a lie, it was a myth, a modern epic that he was weaving in real time. In this narrative, he was not just going to be another IT professional working in a cubicle. He was going to be a vital part of Elon Musk's revolutionary mission to the stars. It was a narrative of unparalleled genius, of boundless ambition, a story that promised a future of unimaginable prestige, wealth, and historical importance. This lie was a powerful, multi-purpose tool of manipulation. It filled his parents with a level of ecstatic pride that likely served to blind them to the growing, nagging inconsistencies in his other, more mundane stories. After all, how could a young man personally selected by a company as revolutionary as SpaceX be anything other than a certified genius? The lie also served to solidify and deepen his relationship with his girlfriend, Kat. She was completely swept up in the powerful fantasy, making concrete, life-altering plans to pack up her own life and move to Florida with him to start their new, glamorous chapter among the palm trees and rocket launches. The impending move to Florida was a stroke of manipulative genius. It created a tangible deadline, a sense of powerful, inexorable forward momentum that brilliantly masked the crushing reality that his life was, in fact, completely stalled, adrift in a sea of unemployment and failure. But as the fictional departure date loomed ever closer, the pressure to produce tangible results, a signed apartment lease, airline tickets, a corporate relocation package became immense. The fantasy was on a collision course with reality. And so, with the cunning of a seasoned scriptwriter, Chandler orchestrated another dramatic plot twist. He suffered a serious and debilitating fall down the stairs in his home, resulting, he claimed, in a severe concussion and persistent, painful nerve damage. The timing was suspiciously, almost miraculously, convenient. The accident occurred just days before his scheduled departure for Florida. It provided him with the perfect, medically sound, and tragic excuse to lose the dream job. He could now claim, with a performance of deep disappointment, that his significant injuries had forced SpaceX to reluctantly rescind their once-in-a-lifetime offer. This incident, whether an intentionally self-inflicted injury, a genuine accident that he opportunistically and brilliantly exploited, or a complete fabrication from start to finish, was a critical plot device in his ongoing, real-life soap opera. It bought him precious time and, crucially, it bought him a wave of sympathy, skillfully deflecting any potential anger or suspicion from his parents and girlfriend into pity and concern. The police scuba team, a fabricated hero, to add a final glistening layer of heroism and civic duty to his carefully constructed persona, to inoculate himself against any perception of selfishness or laziness, Chandler claimed to be a volunteer member of a local police scuba diving and rescue team. This lie was particularly insidious and morally bankrupt, as it co-opted the very real bravery and sacrifice of genuine first responders. It was a lie designed to inspire a deep and unshakable sense of respect and admiration. In this fiction, he was not just a student or a future rocket scientist. He was a hero in waiting, a man who would risk his own life in the line of duty for the safety of others. It painted him as a brave, selfless, and responsible member of the community. It was a stark, calculated, and utterly false contrast to the pathetic reality. An unemployed, parasitic young adult living a life devoid of purpose, contribution, or honor. Each of these lies was a critical, load-bearing wall in the grand, unstable architecture of his false identity. The college lie supported the job lies. The job lies justified his parasitic financial situation. The hero lie polished his character into a shining beacon of virtue. They were all interconnected, a complex web of deceit so tightly and intricately woven that pulling on a single, errant thread threatened to unravel the entire grotesque tapestry. It was this profound, structural interconnectedness that transformed the impending discovery of his academic failure from a simple, albeit profound, embarrassment into a full-blown existential threat. The exposure of that one foundational lie would not just make him look bad, it would obliterate the very essence of the person he pretended to be, and it would bring the entire world he had so painstakingly built crashing down around him. He was living in a house of cards, and the hurricane of truth was on the horizon. Part 2. The Catalyst for Violence, Narcissistic Injury, and Psychological Collapse. The meticulously constructed world of Chandler Halderson, a fragile reality built of digital smoke and mirrors, did not merely crack. It began to violently fracture on Thursday, the 1st of July 2021. This was not a day of reckoning he stumbled into by accident. It was a hard deadline he could no longer postpone, a final curtain call he could no longer evade. It was the day his father, Bart, a man of numbers and logic whose patience had finally been eroded to dust by 1,000 tiny inconsistencies and broken promises, had scheduled a face-to-face meeting with officials at Madison College. He was a man on a simple mission: to get clear, undeniable answers about his son's academic standing, about the endless and convoluted tuition problems, about the transcripts he couldn't seem to obtain. It was a meeting, Chandler knew, with the cold, gut-wrenching, adrenalized certainty of a cornered animal, would expose everything. The lies had run their course. The pressure had reached an absolute, unsustainable breaking point. The performance was, definitively, about to end. From a clinical perspective, this impending meeting was not just a threat, it was the ultimate narcissistic injury. This psychological concept is crucial to understanding the violence that followed. A narcissistic injury is a perceived threat, a criticism, a rejection, a public failure that challenges a narcissist's grandiose and fragile sense of self. It threatens to expose the mediocrity or fraudulence that lies beneath their polished, superior exterior. For an individual with a personality structure like Chandler's, such an exposure is not merely embarrassing or shameful. It is experienced as a form of psychological annihilation, a threat to their very existence. The typical response to a severe narcissistic injury is not sadness or introspection, but narcissistic rage, an intense, often violent fury directed at the person or entity perceived to be the source of the injury. In the days and hours leading up to July 1st, Chandler's internal state must have been a maelstrom of mounting panic and primal fear. The man who had been his primary source of narcissistic supply, the provider of financial support, housing, and the unquestioning admiration upon which his ego fed had transformed. Bart was no longer an audience. He was an inquisitor. He had been devalued in Chandler's mind from a useful tool into a mortal enemy, an existential threat to the survival of the fantasy self Chandler had created. The dehumanization process, a necessary psychological precursor to extreme violence, had likely begun. Bart was no longer his father. He was the problem. The decision to murder, therefore, must be understood not as a crime of passion or a sudden, explosive loss of control. It was a cold, calculated, and terrifyingly instrumental act of violence. The goal was not to express anger, but to solve the problem. In the chillingly logical, emotion-free calculus of a psychopathic mind, the simplest way to prevent the meeting that would destroy his world was to permanently eliminate the person who had scheduled it. The act of patricide was, in his deeply distorted view, an act of radical self-preservation. He was killing the messenger to kill the message, and in doing so, he believed he could save the only thing that truly mattered to him, his lie. The Last Supper and the genesis of a lie. According to the initial, chillingly calm narrative, Chandler would feed to the police a narrative constructed in the immediate, bloody aftermath of the murders. The evening of July 1st was steeped in a deceptive, almost mocking banality. He portrayed a scene of utter domestic tranquility. He had, he claimed, cooked dinner for his parents, a simple meal shared together at the family table. Over this Last Supper, he claimed, they discussed their imminent weekend getaway to the family cabin in the rustic, peaceful woods of Langlade County, a 3-hour drive north. He even helped them pack, he said, handling their luggage, ever the helpful son. This narrative was his first active post-mortem lie. It was a story born of desperate, psychopathic necessity, a verbal smokescreen designed with two primary objectives. First, to create a crucial time buffer, a space of several days where no one would actively look for his parents, giving him time to dispose of their bodies. And second, to misdirect any potential investigation hundreds of miles away from the blood-soaked, chemical-scented truth of his own home. He elaborated on this fiction with the unnerving consistency of a practiced liar to authorities, to his concerned older brother, and to his parents' worried friends who began to call. His parents, he explained with a carefully rehearsed story, had been picked up by a mysterious couple on the morning of Friday, July 2nd. This couple, whose names he conveniently didn't know and whose vehicle he frustratingly couldn't describe, were supposedly friends of theirs who were going to drive them to the cabin. This detail, clumsy and vague under any real scrutiny, was a necessary invention. It was the only plausible way to explain why Bart and Krista's cars were still parked, silent and unmoved, in the driveway. By introducing this unknown external party, he was attempting to seed the nascent investigation with doubt, to create phantom suspects onto whom suspicion could theoretically be cast. He was no longer just lying about his life. He was now, with cold precision, lying for his life. The performance of a concerned son, a masterclass in deception. In the days that followed, with the dismembered remains of his parents hidden within the home, Chandler Halderson delivered the performance of a lifetime. He fully and completely submerged himself in the role of the worried, frantic son, a young man grappling with the terrifying, unexplained silence from his missing parents. Every action was calculated, every word meticulously chosen to reinforce this fraudulent image. The co-worker's visit, a test of the narrative. When Krista, a woman known for her unwavering punctuality and professionalism, failed to show up for work on Friday, an unprecedented and immediately alarming occurrence, a concerned colleague arrived at the Halderson home. Chandler met him at the door, his face a perfect mask of mild, relatable concern. He calmly and convincingly delivered his pre-rehearsed story about the cabin trip and the last-minute change of transportation plans. He suggested, with a plausible shrug, that in the rush to leave, his mother had simply and uncharacteristically forgotten to call in. The story worked. The colleague, his most immediate fears temporarily assuaged, left. This was the first major, real-world test of his new narrative, and he had passed it with flying colors, a success that would have emboldened his sense of superior intellect. Digital deception, a ghost in the machine. On Sunday, July 4th, as fireworks lit up the sky across America, Chandler engaged in a modern and deeply perverse